Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description. Deadly Drinking Pirate by Darren. Ace was wondering about that sake he stole from those pirates before allowing his little brother Luffy drink it when they became brothers. And now Luffy has gained a new ability, one that defies the laws of devil fruits and yet makes him even stronger than before. Watch this drunk-proof pirate become the king of them all. Mature Luffy duel. Devil fruit. Luffy/Harim, I don't own anything, adios.
I still think I should kill you for getting the Marines to send one of their monsters on us for real. It was hard to tell if it was a joke or a serious threat. The Den Mushi didn't even change its expression, yet Luffy was not worried. But we will still watch over the Grand King's brew for anyone who will want to sink her. Let's hope this Rayleigh character gets here soon. You just watch on yourself, wherever you are. Thank you, Frankie. Best of luck. The young captain responded, tucking in the little snail back in his vest. Now, he knows that he can count on his crew to do their duty, but with the Marines getting ready to go after the other 9 big shots scattered across the archipelago, there was this bad feeling. Like the one you get when it seems that your enemy is going to pull something under your feet. And yet, Mugiwara, Strawhat, a wild roar was heard that shook the massive trees a bit, just a bit. What the hell are you fucking shitting this over with? You got the fucking Marines to send one of their fucking monsters on us. What the fuck is your fucking problem? For being a pirate, the young man had a good excuse for talking like a sailor. Hello Eustace kid, glad to see that there is a brain in there somewhere. It takes a lot to scare this young captain. If you wanted to talk business, you could have just said so. Now little Isa is going to have nightmares for weeks. Luffy's casual tone was amplified somehow with his crew glaring something terrible at the foul-mouthed Eustace. Not to mention how the little girl was watched over by the women straw hats like mother hens. While the kid pirates were trembling, Eustace and Killer just took a step back, something about a painful memory rather than fear. Now how about we start over? What has gotten you all worked up about? Luffy broke the ice with a friendly tone. There was still the glare of promised pain to any fool speak out in another vulgar curse. However, hold that thought. We have company. As if on cue, something large landed right behind the kid pirates, causing them to either scream or get on the defense. What the? As much as Eustace wanted to curse out in spite of the Straw Hat's warning glare, his breath was taken away from the sight. Whatever landed in their presence had stirred up a lot of smoke, and as it cleared, it looked like Bartholomew Kuma. While everyone was panicking, focused on this being that truly resembles the Shichibuki Kuma, Luffy noticed something else while the massive man was standing up from its landing. Large bold letters that inscribed PX4. What the hell is one of the Shichibuki, 7 warlords of the sea, here, Captain? Is he here because we are with Mugiwara, Straw Hat, who quit the ranks? Captain, what are we going to do? How are we going to beat one of the Shichibuki? Shut your traps. Eustace was both antsy and in a bad mood when it looks like the Shichibuki had found him at the last spot before the New World. Shit. Why did it have to be him? The government's lapdog of all the fuckers they could have sent. Eustace, Captain Kidd. Bounty worth 315 million berries. A mechanical voice was heard from Kuma, and that scared the kid pirates even more. All the while, the Straw Hats noticed something off about that voice. But thinking had to wait when Kuma started to move, reaching for one of its gloves. Upon removing it off its right hand, it opened its palm to face the kid pirates. There was a small but strange opening right in the center. Yet Kid knew it was not good. Move, you little shits. The kid pirates screamed again and scattered when a bright yellow beam shot right out of the hand of the massive man. They had to stay on their toes when the beam not only hit the ground but was turned into a makeshift laser that carved into the mangrove. The most who were able to avoid it lost their voices when the laser blew a hole into the base of a nearby mangrove tree. They didn't think anything from paradise could destroy those tough trees. And yet, Kuma turned to face the Straw Hats who haven't moved from their place in front of the bar. Although Isa and Chopper were still shaking a bit, even when they were behind their captain along with Nami and Najiko. Monkey D, Mugiwara, Luffy, the Liber Glade, former member of the Shichibuki. Bounty frozen at 80 million berries. Current bounty still impending. This confirmed what Kid and the other super rookies were informed earlier that day. While most of the kid pirates were wondering why the Navy has not confirmed Luffy's new bounty, the captain and his first mate had a good idea. Nevertheless, Kuma raised his hand and shot out another blinding shot straight at the Straw Hats. They never even tried to evade the attack. What the fuck? What the hell is wrong with them? Kid ranted out loud. How did they even get here if they couldn't even? Kid really felt cheated somehow until Killer took him by his shoulder and pointed at the same spot the Straw Hats last stood. Only, once the smoke cleared, there was the biggest surprise yet. The bar behind them wasn't damaged, not a single person was out of place. The only thing different was the captain extending his dormant right arm and had the palm out. It was almost like Luffy had taken in the laser and hadn't even gotten a burn. For once, Kid had no words to say, and fortunate for him too because Kuma started to shake and freeze up. Almost like he couldn't process what had just happened. If I didn't know you better, I would have warned you, Luffy said in an eerie calm tone. Let's just say if you can't figure out what had happened, then you won't survive in the new world. Turning to Robin, he spoke while pointing at Kuma, hold him down. She smirked and crossed her arms with the posture needed to use her powers. The kid pirates were wondering what the Straw Hats were going to do once the shock from before had worn off. Too bad that the same can be said for Kuma, who got ready to fire another laser but this time, from the mouth instead of the palm. Everyone present at the scene waited with bated breath, and once the laser had fully recharged, Kuma had its mouth clamped shut hard at the last minute, causing the laser to backfire. That awed the kid pirates, and even their captain was surprised this time. But before they could cheer, something else happened to Kuma. It was like its feet were stuck to the ground, with the massive man struggling to even move its shoes. Also, the head of Kuma was behaving as if someone had it in a grappling hold, holding it by the chin and tugging it backward. Coupled that with its feet held down, the midsection started to buckle and crack. It took only a moment of terrible sounds heard before the big snap came with Kuma broken in half like a candy cane. That got the kid pirates to scream out loud at the sight. Achenta Fururu, 80 flowers. A woman's voice was immediately heard, whispering in the wind. Suk Karachi, clear clutch. As soon as she finished her sentence, Robin appeared in front of the downed body of Kuma. It was like a concealment had been placed on her and she lifted it off like a bed sheet. This time, the kid pirates and even most of the Straw Hats were trying to figure this one out. That was until Nami's face light up like a light bulb, which was followed by a sly smirk. So that was what you said to Robin after you butchered that intruder who can turn invisible. Luffy didn't need to speak to show how his secret was spilled. He simply showed a sheepish expression. And if I didn't know better, you have a type of women with Akuma no Mi, devil fruit, powers. Every woman I came to know very well did not need an Akuma no Mi to get their point across. It is just a nice bonus. Luffy responded that time with a voice as smooth as silk, just what he needed to avoid an awkward situation in front of several watching eyes. That and the quick smooch on Nami's favorite spot, the cheek around her eye, did help a bit. He should know when his cat burglar of a girlfriend started to pouse cat. And yet, the kid pirates could only force their jaws shut. They all had been falling down so hard that their mouths hurt. What the living hell is with these pirates? That was the general thought going through all their minds. That was when yet another impact was made that got the attention of the pirates. You seriously fell to these lowlifes so easily, PX4. You are a pathetic prototype. When that voice emerged from the smoke, no one could count on a strange man with an axe on his shoulder, with yet another, Bartholomew Kuma, behind him. XXXXX, okay. That should be everyone with the exception of Captain and his company. Alvida was at the Grand King's brew, doing her duties of the first mate of the Straw Hats. Once they all got the call on their mini Den Den Mushi to return to the ship immediately, the Straw Hats did just that. It helped that the special bubbles made carrying the massive loads a breeze. It took no time at all to bring it all to the ship. Too bad they still had to move it around on deck the old-fashioned way. After a few moments that felt like forever due to the tension, Usopp called out, "Okay, everything is in place. Now we just hold down the fort and anyone that comes to sink our ship, we will sink them instead." The past several months of going in and out of danger had paid off. The sniper now has the confidence to make the rally call without any stage fright. And yet that all was silenced when T-Bone happened to spy something in the corner of his eye, something that stole his breath away. Kuro noticed that the usual pale-looking face got worse and turned towards the starboard side of the ship. This started off a chain reaction with everyone noticing the former and alerting the latter. XXXXX back at Shaki's rip-off bar. The kid pirates did not know what to do at this point. The first, Kuma, attacked them as soon as it arrived, but this one seems to be on standby while the other strange man kept on scolding the first on the ground, as if a teacher ripping into his disappointing student. That was until. It seems that, in spite of being bad, we all got the privilege of meeting the bodyguard of the Dr. Vegapunk. Not to mention, the leader of the Marine Science Unit. Tell me, is the good doctor still mad about his prototype being stolen? Sentomaru? The strange-looking man stopped in his ranting and turned to face Luffy with a mouth open like a goldfish. The Straw Hats were stoic and unflinching while the kid pirates were twitching in their efforts to not drop their mouths again. They hurt enough as it is. Sentomaru is a large man with light skin and a stocky build similar to that of a sumo wrestler. He has a large scar extending from his left eye to the left corner of his mouth. His outfit consists of a shirt that resembles a giant brown apron with an emblem meaning heaven on the front, and a large red and white robe. Sentomaru also has bandages wrapped around his right fist and elbows, along with the kanji, sen, tattooed on his left shoulder. Sentomaru carries around a huge, two-edged axe, as tall as himself, and just as large. It didn't take long until Sentomaru clenched his jaw shut and resumed his serious look. Monkey D. Mugiwara, Luffy. The Liber Glade. And former member of the Shichibuki, our intel was spot on. You're here to journey to the new world. Duh, why would any pirate come here? This isn't even an island, just a bunch of Grand Line trees put together. Luffy responded with clear sarcasm in his tone. Now tell me why the Marines sent you of all people here. Are they tired of the Shichibuki not being their loyal dogs? Sentomaru narrowed his eyes. Funny you should bring that up. Quitting on us right when we need all of you pirate scum to fall in line. War is on the horizon, for goodness sake. That cleared any remaining suspicion the kid pirates had from what happened with Scratchman of Pooh outside the bar earlier that day. They just weren't aware that the same news was also delivered to the rest of the super rookies on Saiboti around roughly the same time. So, they are still sore for cheating on me and not getting away with it like they are used to. This is what can happen when you ask criminals to do their jobs. Luffy responded with no real worry, but he didn't really answer my question, either. Shut up, Sentomaru barked back, clearly not in the mood to be causal with a pirate. I am not here with the world government's latest pirate killing machine just to make small talk with one of the sea scumbags. The large man with a woman's face widened his eyes and raised his hands as if to block an attack. Too bad for him and the witnessing kid pirates. It happened in the blink of an eye. No, you are not. So, let's quit the lollygagging and get to it. Luffy spoke from his new location, apparently punching at Sentomaru and sent the sumo man flying in a split second. Before the kid pirates could respond, their shared enemy emerged from the base of the tree was sent towards. He didn't even have a bruise. Just as Sentomaru reached for his axe, with no more words spoken, "Enough," Captain Kidd in question shouted. "I have had enough with you shitheads ignoring me. If you don't think of me as a threat as you think that annoying rubberhead Mugiwara is, then I will teach you." Suddenly, a storm of blades of various sizes and shapes appeared behind Captain Kidd. Die. Luffy looked at the dozens of weapons hailing down towards Sentomaru with an unimpressed look, and so did the target himself. Once again shooting out his palm, the storm of weapons stopped in midair and shattered. And they were shattered with such force the naked eye couldn't see that they were even sent flying away from their target, not a single piece even causing a cut. Nevertheless, Captain Kidd had the impression of a goldfish once he saw his attack failed while Luffy's punch landed. PX5, dispose of those rookies, they are nothing but pests. Sentomaru spoke coldly as the second Kuma took off its own gloves to show an identical hand with a hole in the palm. But this time, opening its mouth as well. Both the palm of its hand and its mouth glowed bright yellow before a pair of laser bolts this time shot out towards the kid pirates. They screamed in the split second before the lasers will hit them, but before they could raise their arms and close their eyes to await their demise, the laser bolts suddenly veered off in an angle that missed them, but the shock wave still sent them toppling like dominoes. Don't kill them, Sentomaru. I need them to be proper competition in the race to be the next king. Luffy said as if it was no big deal, to him that is. Sentomaru was about to retort or issue another order, but Luffy cut him off. Know what, never mind. Do it, Ghost Girl. Just as Luffy finished, Sentomaru's eyes widened. Suddenly his body caved in, but instead of falling backwards, he fell forwards onto his hands and knees. He then started mumbling in a depressed tone while lowering his head down in shame. This time, even the kid himself was speechless and found it hard to respond to this sight until the air was filled with a creepy but feminine giggle. Horo, I did good, right Captain? The Straw Hats either groaned or simply rolled their eyes at the high, shrilly voice, while Luffy was as stoic as a lord. Especially when a certain young girl appeared, floating in the air with the cartoonish ghosts giggling along, with her arms on his shoulder. I think that you are finally getting the hang of your real abilities, much more than when you were lazing away in the Florian Triangle, Perona. Luffy answered as neutral as he could. He did tolerate the advances of the little ghost girl, only losing his cool when she got into her crazed fangirl stage. Now please tell me you got your chores down, your shopping done, and that you got the rest of the super rookies here in Sabaody. Perona nodded something fierce with the same creepy smile on her face. Good girl, now then. What the fuck are you doing now, Mugiwara? Are you going to keep looking down on us? We have Kian. Kid finally got his voice back, and just in time for his crew to suddenly drop one by one into the same fashion as the sumo man. He saw those same cartoon ghosts soaring and shotting right through his crew members, giggling and smiling all the way. He growled loudly and, to no avail, tried to grab at the ghosts, but they were transparent to his foolish actions. Just as he turned to the one responsible, 4 of those ghosts shot out of his chest. This time, Kid just landed on the ground like a deadweight. Can't have him say anything from that month of his under your usual spell. Now he is too into it to speak at all. Luffy spoke up, answering a question that was hovering in the air for a bit. Besides, he will appreciate this, someday. That was when it happened. Almost like in the aftermath of Thriller Bark, when a life signature was slowly but still burning until it was snuffed out. This time, several signatures on his radar suddenly left range. One by one, silent as lambs, disappearing without resistance. Not even a peep was heard, just the wind along the massive trees. But Luffy didn't stir. Before it happened, he felt two light and small bodies colliding with him and a voice in his ear. "We won't see each other again. Farewell, son of dragon." And that was the last anyone had seen of the Liber Glade until the great turnover that will shake the world forever. World forever. PX5, dispose of those rookies. They are nothing but pests. Sentomaru spoke coldly as the second Kuma took off its own gloves to show an identical hand with a hole in the palm. But this time, opening its mouth as well. Both the palm of its hand and its mouth glowed bright yellow before a pair of laser bolts this time shot out towards the kid pirates. They screamed in the split second before the lasers will hit them, but before they could raise their arms and close their eyes to await their demise, the laser bolts suddenly veered off in an angle that missed them, but the shock waves still sent them toppling like dominoes. "Don't kill them, Sentomaru. I need them to be proper competition in the race to be the next king," Luffy said as if it was no big deal, to him that is. Sentomaru was about to retort or issue another order, but Luffy cut him off. "No what, never mind. Do it, Ghost Girl." Just as Luffy finished, Sentomaru's eyes widened. Suddenly his body caved in, but instead of falling backwards, he fell forwards onto his hands and knees. He then started mumbling in a depressed tone while lowering his head down in shame. This time, even the kid himself was speechless and found it hard to respond to this sight until the air was filled with a creepy but feminine giggle. "Horo horo horo, I did good, right Captain?" The Straw Hats either groaned or simply rolled their eyes at the high, shrilly voice, while Luffy was as stoic as a lord. Especially when a certain young girl appeared, floating in the air with the cartoonish ghosts giggling along, with her arms on his shoulder. "I think that you are finally getting the hang of your real abilities, much more than when you were lazing away in the Florian Triangle, Perona." Luffy answered as neutral as he could. He did tolerate the advances of the little ghost girl, only losing his cool when she got into her crazed fangirl stage. "Now please tell me you got your chores down, your shopping done, and that you got the rest of the super rookies here in Sabaody." Perona nodded something fierce with the same creepy smile on her face. "Good girl, now then. What the fuck are you doing now, Mugiwara? Are you going to keep looking down on us? We have killed plenty for less." And Kid finally got his voice back, and just in time for his crew to suddenly drop one by one into the same fashion as the sumo man. He saw those same cartoon ghosts soaring and shotting right through his crew members, giggling and smiling all the way. He growled loudly and, to no avail, tried to grab at the ghosts, but they were transparent to his foolish actions. Just as he turned to the one responsible, 4 of those ghosts shot out of his chest. This time, Kid just landed on the ground like a deadweight. Can't have him say anything from that month of his under your usual spell. Now he is too into it to speak at all. Luffy spoke up, answering a question that was hovering in the air for a bit. Besides, he will appreciate this, someday. That was when it happened. Almost like in the aftermath of Thriller Bark, when a life signature was slowly but still burning until it was snuffed out. This time, several signatures on his radar suddenly left range. One by one, silent as lambs, disappearing without resistance. Not even a peep was heard, just the wind along the massive trees. But Luffy didn't stir. Before it happened, he felt 2 light and small bodies colliding with him and a voice in his ear. "We won't see each other again. Farewell, son of dragon." And that was the last anyone had seen of the Liber Glade until the great turnover that will shake the world forever. High in the skies above the ocean waters, "Why am I still not surprised that it was you two that tackled me?" Luffy asked in a deadpan tone as he was lying in some strange bubble that was shaped like a familiar paw. "Sorry Luffy-kun, but I still got scared of Kuma back there." "Me too, he was always scarier than Moria." Luffy just rubbed his forehead for a headache that may be coming. "I get it, kitty cat, ghost girl," he addressed his present company. "Just try not to fight it if you can't face it next time. Surrender is still more painless than defeat." It was hardly a time to pull a life lesion when you are in a strange flying bubble with 2 attractive ladies who were scared of their wits of what happened previous. "Now let's sleep. I have a feeling this thing is not letting us go until it arrives where it is going." And for the next several hours, that was the case. The bubble flew without slowing down or speeding up. All the passengers could do were to get comfy and sleep through it. They were so comfortable that they didn't care about the sea monster that tried to eat them, but the bubble burst right through it instead. Now it is just free food for anything that is hungry enough to eat sea monster meat. All the while the passengers were just snoozing away, and all the way through the night too. It wasn't until the next morning that the bubble had finally started to change direction and drop down onto dry land. There was some leftover force to cushion the landing a bit, which effectively woke up the passengers. "Could have been a better landing," Luffy mumbled with his rest slightly disturbed. "At least we are no longer flying to who knows where," Nami added, trying to shake the sudden awakening out of her systems. "But where are we, master? It looks like a jungle." Perona spoke up, and it was true. They were in the middle of a jungle. There wasn't anything else to say about it other than that they were actually in an opening with one side facing the sea, which means that they were on an island with a jungle around the edging. Reminds me of my home island, but I have a gut feeling that we are not there. Luffy commented. Now if only there was a real high spot where we can have a better view of where we are. Luffy was cut off by the screams of his girlfriend and the ghost girl who fled to his backside. It was an oversized boar that appeared from the thick trees, looking at them like a meal. Too bad for him. Luffy saw it as a meal. Hello, breakfast. That, with the cracking of his knuckles and a devious, hungry smile had gotten the boar to suddenly feel scared. In no time, the boar was cooked in a simple but effective campfire with all present scarfing down the meat. Everything that has happened back in the archipelago had gotten them a good appetite. Normally, Nami won't eat like a starving animal would, but she didn't care. Who will scold you for having the manners of a wild beast in the middle of a jungle? Okay, now that we are all fed, how are we going to find out where we are? Nami ate more than she ever thought she could but still wanted to get back on track. Perona was too busy trying to give up half her share to her captain. Luffy just politely told her, no, each time. All I know is that we can't be in the Grand Line anymore. That got the attention of her only companions. I can guess why, pretty kitty, but I want to hear it from you. Luffy finally spoke, slightly proud of himself for not sounding like a moron for letting his girlfriend explain. The ocean is far too peaceful. Even on a good day, if possible, and the Grand Line has waves all over. But the whole time since we landed, Nami started and then pointed towards a clearing that showed the ocean in all its blue and peaceful glory. I haven't seen any waves. My guess is that we are currently in the calm belt, and for once, we don't have to worry about that nest of sea kings from forever ago. Sure seems that way, Luffy muttered under his breath while Perona had no words for such a rookie mistake as a sailor heading to the Grand Line. But if we are going to find out where we are, that looks like the best spot. The girls knew that if they didn't know their captain, they would have screamed to high heaven when Luffy pointed at a high stone wall that sticks out worse than a sore thumb. XXXXX later, on top of the massive wall, there was nothing but the sound of wind streaking across the earth making up the top and the rocks that little the sound of elastic stretching was heard, right before a human hand appeared and anchored itself with its fingers at the top. While struggling and slipping a bit, the arm attached to the hand had stretched all the way to the top. That was of course Luffy's hand, used as if a grappling hook shot out of a launcher. The pirate captain himself landed on his feet, with his girlfriend comfy in his arms while the ghost girl clung to his neck like a lifeline. Now that was fun. We should try it more often. It was an odd thing to say while still on an island they don't know, but the girls just giggled along. Maybe some other day, Luffy-kun. Nami, for once, found the rugged sport to be fun. Especially when her boyfriend had prevented even the smallest piece of dust or rock from landing on her clothes. Now let's see where we are. Nami turned over to the side facing away from the jungle they just left and had her breath taken away. Perona, who wished to stay where she was, saw it too and reluctantly left the warm and comfy bag to get a better look. Once Luffy looked, he groaned out loud. Of course, it had to be here. If Kuma wasn't working with my father, I will melt his head, still on his shoulders for this. The girls didn't know why their captain was upset. It was a beautiful sight. An entire city within the massive rock encircle. There were houses, rice fields, a plaza and even a fancy house located on the wall of the rock formation rather than on the ground. That one looked super important to be above the rest. Is something wrong, Captain? Perona spoke up with real concern, with a little fear about their captain being in a foul mood. Do you not like this place? Have you been here before? No, Perona. I have not been here before, but I know it perfectly well. Luffy answered. And while you guys are in the clear, as soon as those Amazons see me, they will try to fill my hide with arrows. That word, Amazons, struck a chord in Perona's mind while Nami was still silent with confusion. You mean the Amazons, the all-women race that serves under one of the Shichibuki, the Snake Princess and the most beautiful woman in the world? Perona shouted out, that slightly startled Nami while Luffy nodded. Aye, that is what the world calls her, making her the official queen of the Amazons. And is true for every one of the Amazons. Their strength matches their beauty. So, their queen is also officially the strongest of all the Amazons. And her real name is Boa Hancock. Luffy explained in one breath. And Kuma has sent us straight in her territory, and still the worst part is, pausing for a bit of dramatic flair with a tired sign, she hates men. All the while he was explaining, his eyes were fixated on the fancy house on the rock wall with a hint of regret for what he was about to do. And the girls caught on it and just gently placed their palms on their faces. Here's hoping that things won't go all south. XXXXX Boa Hancock. A woman that most will agree looks more like a goddess instead of a lowly mortal. She has no need for makeup like those swallow-natured supermodels or stuck-up wives of nobles. Her beauty was genuine and real. So was her hatred of men. For years, she wished to no longer lay her eyes on a filthy and lowly man in her life. However, her position as one of the Shichibuki had called her to answer to the world government and the occasional marine ship with a vice admiral on board to make sure that she was tending to her duties. Every single time, the entire crew will fall to her beauty and turn to stone. Hence why she and her older sisters, one is tall with an enormous head and the other to be terribly tubby, were referred by the Marines and even the Amazons as the Gorgon Sisters. The latter called their rulers by those names for how anyone, be a man or a woman, to gaze on their backs will turn to stone as well. The unfortunate fate of the Marine crew, on the other hand, was not done by looking at her back, it was done by her Akuma no Mi. The Mero Mero no Mi, love fruit, in spite of what the name may suggest, does not actually cause the targets to fall in love with the user. Instead, it feeds on the raw lust and or inflation the targets show to the user. Once the user has the targets falling for them, all the user has to do is place their hands in the shape of a heart and shoot a beam of hearts that turn all those who gaze on it to turn to solid stone. Coupled with that, an impressive agility, strength and skill with her tribe's fighting style has allowed Boa Hancock to be recognized as worthy of the Shichibuki title. All she ever asked in return was that no Marines or government official, be they a man or a woman, to ever set foot on her home island or interfere with her pirate crew's business on the open sea. Which brings to the Queen returning home from a successful trip of raids along with meeting with a vice admiral who wanted to hear that Hancock was keeping her end of the deal. While his crew was unfortunately turned to stone, their superior was able to avoid that fate by stabbing his own hand. The pain successfully blocked out any lust or inflation that his disgraceful crew were not even trying to hide. Nevertheless, Hancock left him on that ship with stone statues for a crew to make it on his own. Largely due to her man-hating views, seeing men go out the same way every time and how her beauty can entice even her fellow women, Hancock has developed a rather spoiled and self-important attitude. She will be willing to even kick adorable little pets like puppies and seals simply because they were in her path. It was only because her beauty and how she can show an innocent, childish look claiming to not know better and was worried to be yelled at that she gets off scot-free, worked every single time. Well, actually not all the time. There are still a few more exceptions, a few people that her charms don't work as well as the masses. That being said, Hancock was truly pestered by an old Amazon with a walking cane and a crystal ball coming to claim that the Queen's reign will come to a swift end. Too bad that it sounded more like a conspiracy and that crystal ball turned out to be fake. That old Amazon was instead swiftly kicked out of the house on the rock wall. Upon making a clean landing, that old Amazon remarked that while she was old, she was the previous queen of the Amazons until Hancock seized her throne. Right now, Hancock had also destroyed a mud figurine of herself made by the tribe's youth. She didn't want anything from the ground below in her house. With all that behind her, a hot bath was finally in the works. Of course, she demanded that her sisters will stand guard up front while the entire building was evacuated. The Amazons were told that they will be turned to stone should they remain in the palace while the Queen bathed. This bath session, however, was going to be interrupted regardless when the ceiling collapsed and 3 intruders landed inside the bathroom and outside the bath itself. XXXXX. Who would dare? Hancock was startled for sure, and yet the idea of intruders after her life was not on her mind. She trusted the security brought by her sisters will prevent anyone from entering the baths. Now she was more worried about something else. Now there is not 1 but 3 intruders who broke through her roof. Sandersonia, Marigold, to me now. Her sisters from outside her clearly and arrived in no time. Sandersonia is a tall woman who resembles a snake, with a curvaceous figure and large breasts like her sisters. Her head is disproportionately large and wide to her body, and her long tongue is forked, often sticking out of her mouth, and has sea-green eyes. She dresses in very revealing clothing. A green bikini top with white irregular patterns, a white cape over it and green panties encircled by flaps at both sides of her hips. Marigold, on the other hand, is a muscled, fat, large woman. She also has large breasts with revealing cleavage. Her hair is arranged in a way that it looks like the patterns on a cobra's hood and to some extent. Marigold wears a pink bikini with gold tassels that trail down to her pink loincloth and purple flaps. She also wears a headband and necklace that is made out of pink flowers. In her hand was a lavish bathrobe that Hancock dressed into immediately. "A man? How the hell did you get on our island? How did you get past the village's security?" Marigold shouted in anger and disbelief. And those 2 ladies behind him, they are also outsiders, no doubt in leagues with his filthy man. "Silence, sisters. He has done a crime greater than intruding on our island. He has saw what was on my back." Hancock was not going to let the intruders explain themselves. She didn't even care that 2 more fell in after the man and landed on the ladder like a cushion. It was only when the intruders, Luffy and company, turned to face the Queen they had disturbed that the Hancock spoke with a voice of judgment. "Vile male and her cohorts have witnessed something that all 3 of us rather die than reveal. Take your punishment, Mero Mero Mellow, Love Beam." Once Hancock positioned her hands into the heart shape, a stream of hearts shot out at Luffy and his girls. While the 2 girls tensed at the sight of a strange beam of hearts, Luffy didn't even try to get up from his position. After a few seconds, nothing had happened. "Okay lady, that was a nice trick. Can you just give us a raft or something? It seems suicidal for a man to act truly like a ruffian in the presence of the world's most beautiful man." Fortunately for him, The three sisters were more focused on how the beam did not do anything to him. Marrow marrow mellow, love love beam. Hancock used another one and like the first, nothing happened. Marrow marrow. Lady, if it didn't work the second time then why bother try? We don't even want to be here. We have places to be. Luffy interrupted Hancock, got himself up and offered a helping hand to Nami and Perona who were still frightened a bit by the whole time. They had no idea how they weren't turned to stone too. What is the meaning of this? You saw me naked but my powers can't turn you to stone. Hancock truly had never encountered such a creature. Men, women, children and even animals fall for her beauty and her powers had worked on them all but not Luffy or his companions. You want to know, Boa Hancock? Luffy sneered at the pirate empress who was even more shocked. Yeah, I know you and the reason you can't turn me to stone is because you're a wretched rose straight out of hell. It's your attitude that ruins your pretty little face. Besides, your power works more on virgins who dream of losing it with a lovely mate. And none of us are virgins. Despite the circumstances, Nami and Perona gained a massive blush. Even Luffy grew one while talking down Hancock. By now, all three sisters are scandalized. They didn't know how to make anything of the situation anymore. It defied them all and they have no idea how to deal with a man that has seen a female bear, admitted to have indulged in the pleasures of the flesh and yet the marrow marrow mellow has no effect on him. Just who the hell are you? I am a pirate like you. The name is Luffy, Monkey D. Luffy. You may not have heard of me but I caused a lot of trouble to a lot of people who thought they can screw with me and get away with it. Luffy answered. Then he got to his knees and assumed the surrender position to the shock of his companions. Now let's get this over with. There is no point in talking this over anymore. No more words were needed when Nami and Perona looked at each other, and just shrugged before doing what Luffy was doing. Hancock signaled silently to her sisters to apprehend the three intruders while her mind was in turmoil over what had just happened. Just what kind of a man is this Luffy? XXXXX located at the base of the Queen's Palace is a Roman-style arena. Right now, it is packed to the brim with the Amazon denizens of the island, all cheering for a show announced by their queen in person. It is here that intruders or anyone that defies the rule and word of the queen to be put on display before execution. Today, the subjects of the show were a straw hat wearing man with a red head and a strange-looking girl, all three of whom were tied up with small black snakes that are acting like ropes. It is a man, a vile man. How dare he come to our home? Who knows what he was planning to do to us, to the children too. The snake princess needs to kill him in the goriest way imaginable. Boo, die. Death to the man and his cohorts. They are as vile as him, no doubt. Funny thing about the crowds cheering, booing and screaming their heads off is that being a pirate gives you thick skin. Luffy and Nami weren't even twitching. Perona herself just looks annoyed by where she was. But she just couldn't bring herself to argue with her new captain. Silence. Hancock bellows out loud that effectively silences the crowds. I rest assure you all, this vile man and his unruly pair of outsiders will die for invading our island. For daring to defy my decency by breaking in during my royal bath time. They all will die a most painful death. They can only call themselves fortunate that they did not gaze onto my backside. Otherwise they would have turned to stone the moment they forcibly entered. The crowd swallowed the story and began shouting more jeers and sneers about the intruders escaping the curse that has scared every Amazon from seeing the bare back of their leader. The royal sisters were the only exception to the curse, to the Amazons that is. Do they seriously believe that bullshit, Luffy? Nami had to ask in spite of the circumstances. No doubt, something that her lover rubbed on her. From what I gathered, only the royal sisters and their pirate crew have left the island and saw the world. They know what men look like. The rest of the Amazons are extremely sheltered, never have left the island once. They're just gullible, clueless and would believe anything their queen feeds them. Luffy grumbled, not amused at all. All they know about men is that they are all evil and only look a bit like women but they haven't seen one until today. So, what are we going to do? These black snakes are giving me a rash. Perona complained out loud that got the crowd to sneer them even more, if that was possible. Not that the ghost girl ever cared. Not much longer. Luffy answered once the ground they were all placed on started to rumble a bit. Sounds like the first act is now on stage. Turning their attention, a gigantic black feline emerged with teeth sharpened for the feast. Apparently, the Amazons recognized the beast to be Bakura the panther. Bakura is a huge black panther, with yellow and red eyes, and large fangs. She sports a brown cap that goes halfway down her back. She also has a wide grin with sharp teeth. Bakura, feed on these intruders and show us all your ferocity, Hancock commanded from her chair. And that gets the crowd cheering even harder while the black snake bindings actually retracted, slithering away. This allowed the subjects to finally get on their feet, and yet they showed no fear. Somehow, being surrounded by a jeering crowd calling out for blood with a giant cat about to eat them was nothing new since the Straw Hats first arrived in the Grand Line. This did not deter Bakura at all. She waited until the shiver of light shone across her eyes, signaling the time to eat. With a mighty leap, the mighty feline already overshadowed her prey. If only she would have saw the look of a greater predator on Luffy's face, maybe Bakura could have backed away instead until he shouted out for the world to hear. Now, as if a magician on stage, Luffy had something pulled out of his sleeve. Something about 40 feet in length, with massive jaws that caught Bakura around where the neck and arms were attached to the rest of the body. While the Amazons were in total shock, Perona got scared into hiding behind a smirking Luffy. The silence was only broken when Nami called out in surprise and a bit of relief. Nola, located at the base of the Queen's Palace, is a Roman-style arena. Right now, it is packed to the brim with the Amazon denizens of the island, all cheering for a show announced by their queen in person. It is here that intruders or anyone that defies the rule and word of the queen to be put on display before execution. Today, the subjects of the show were a straw hat wearing man with a red head and a strange-looking girl, all three of whom were tied up with small black snakes that are acting like ropes. It is a man, a vile man. How dare he come to our home? Who knows what he was planning to do to us, to the children too. The snake princess needs to kill him in the goriest way imaginable. Boo, die. Death to the man and his cohorts. They're as vile as him, no doubt. Funny thing about the crowds cheering, booing and screaming their heads off is that being a pirate gives you thick skin. Luffy and Nami weren't even twitching. Perona herself just looks annoyed by where she was. But she just couldn't bring herself to argue with her new captain. Silence. Hancock bellows out loud that effectively silences the crowds. I rest assure you all, this vile man and his unruly pair of outsiders will die for invading our island. For daring to defy my decency by breaking in during my royal bath time. They all will die a most painful death. They can only call themselves fortunate that they did not gaze onto my backside. Otherwise they would have turned to stone the moment they forcibly entered. The crowd swallowed the story and began shouting more jeers and sneers about the intruders escaping the curse that has scared every Amazon from seeing the bare back of their leader. The royal sisters were the only exception to the curse, to the Amazons that is. Do they seriously believe that bullshit, Luffy? Nami had to ask in spite of the circumstances. No doubt, something that her lover rubbed on her. From what I gathered, only the royal sisters and their pirate crew have left the island and saw the world. They know what men look like. The rest of the Amazons are extremely sheltered, never have left the island once. They're just gullible, clueless and would believe anything their queen feeds them. Luffy grumbled, not amused at all. All they know about men is that they are all evil and only look a bit like women, but they haven't seen one until today. So, what are we going to do? These black snakes are giving me a rash. Perona complained out loud that got the crowd to sneer them even more, if that was possible. Not that the ghost girl ever cared. Not much longer. Luffy answered once the ground they were all placed on started to rumble a bit. Sounds like the first act is now on stage. Turning their attention, a gigantic black feline emerged with teeth sharpened for the feast. Apparently, the Amazons recognized the beast to be Bakura the panther. Bakura is a huge black panther, with yellow and red eyes, and large fangs. She sports a brown cap that goes halfway down her back. She also has a wide grin with sharp teeth. Bakura, feed on these intruders and show us all your ferocity, Hancock commanded from her chair. And that gets the crowd cheering even harder while the black snake bindings actually retracted, slithering away. This allowed the subjects to finally get on their feet, and yet they showed no fear. Somehow, being surrounded by a jeering crowd calling out for blood with a giant cat about to eat them was nothing new since the Straw Hats first arrived in the Grand Line. This did not deter Bakura at all. She waited until the shiver of light shone across her eyes, signaling the time to eat. With a mighty leap, the mighty feline already overshadowed her prey. If only she would have saw the look of a greater predator on Luffy's face, maybe Bakura could have backed away instead until he shouted out for the world to hear. Now, as if a magician on stage, Luffy had something pulled out of his sleeve. Something about 40 feet in length, with massive jaws that caught Bakura around where the neck and arms were attached to the rest of the body. While the Amazons were in total shock, Perona got scared into hiding behind a smirking Luffy. The silence was only broken when Nami called out in surprise and a bit of relief. Nola. Snakes are the theme of the Amazons. Each Amazon warrior carries a special kind of snake that functions as a hunting partner, day-to-day companion and even as effective bows with their signature arrows. Their ship uses not sails and the wind but a pair of large snakes to pull the ship. These snakes actually are more deadly than sea kings, which is how the Amazon pirates can sail in the calm belt, which is the nest for sea kings. And finally, Boa Hancock is known to her people not just as the world's most beautiful woman but as the Snake Princess. In spite of those facts, they were still shocked out of their wits to see Nola in all of her glory. Appearing from the sleeve of the male, trapping their mighty and fierce hunter cat with her grip and roaring to the high heavens for anyone else to approach her master. Nami was shocked as well but was more curious as to how the snake the size of Umi, their pet sea king, hid on board all this time and never knew. Perona just joined the rest of the women present, shocked out of her mind with the eyes nearly bulging out of their sockets. Luffy simply smiled and spoke these words. "Good girl, Nola. Coupled with a tender rub near the mouth, which is the cheek, Nola wished she can purr like cat to show how much she was enjoying it. And she loved the touch of the straw hat wearing captain. The thing that interrupted the otherwise adorable sight was the low growls mixed with a whine from Nola's captive. "Right, Nola, will you so gently get rid of this oversized feline?" Luffy responded using both air quotes and a scary sweet smile that Nola returned. And before anyone could respond, the sound of something large hitting a stone wall was heard. The Amazons in the bleachers of the stadium looked up in shock that the massive panther Bakura was launched high and landed just an inch away to the left of the Gorgon Sisters. They looked back to see the giant snake with her tail unraveled and glaring at the trio rulers with eyes truly with hatred, as if to say, just try that again. While Marigold and Sandersonia were startled at how their prized creature was toyed and disposed so easily, Hancock never broke her glance at her prisoners, sisters. She finally spoke in a volume that everyone heard clearly. They made their statement clear. Our captives will continue to defy us. Execute them properly. In spite of the state of their treasured feline, this order broke the shock on their faces. Marigold and Sandersonia promptly jumped from their positions at their sister's throne and landed on the execution grounds with the grace of well-trained acrobats. Not that it amused their targets while it did excite the crowds. It didn't even bother them that Nola was still the largest creature in the center for the arena. "Male, you and your cohorts which disgrace the name of all women," Sandersonia mocked with a literal forked snake tongue, "have sealed your fates along with your pet. You will suffer a truly painful death as punishment by our hands." As Sandersonia made her monologue, she transformed along with Marigold. The former grew in size and assumed a truly snake-like form complete with a serpent tail and body with scales while retaining her slender arms, ample bust and oversized childlike head that had the same green hair. The latter had a more tan-colored form compared to Sandersonia, with all that muscle and fat still showing in her snake form. She also kept her hair in all its rolled-up glory but with a more rustic red color, almost to the color of fire. Now one might think this will upset the audience since they are unaware of the existence of Akuma no Mi and might call the sisters unsavory names such as freaks or monsters, but instead, they went amazing. It's their cursed forms that only make them look even more beautiful. Cronies do not stand a chance, not even with that large ugly eel. The crowds were losing control over themselves in the excitement. Luffy and his friends were still not amused with this farce. Even a child could tell it was actually the work of Akuma no Miz. It only proves more that the Amazons were so out of touch. That is until. I think that Nola is more beautiful than these two tramps. Nami spoke out loud, only to realize after she did and it was too late to take that back. Nevertheless, all the Amazons were either dumbstruck or outraged. They all heard one of their prisoners, one of the intruders, place their leader's older sisters lower than a wild animal. Nami could have started to panic if not for her experience with her previous stress-inducing situations and a helping hand placed gently on her head. She did not need to look to see who the hand belonged to. "Try not to overexcite them, kitty cat. We can't get off the island if they all move in to kill us." Luffy whispered to her ear and Nami nodded. "In spite of what my girlfriend has said," the young captain soon spoke up on purpose this time. "All we want to get off your home island. This sham of a show is a waste of all our time. Surely you must agree, Boa Hancock." Luffy glared at the still smug Shichibuki, warlord of the sea, sitting comfy in her throne. "If you would just submit to your punishment, we wouldn't have to breathe the same filthy air as you and your cohorts." Hancock finally answered with the same arrogant and self-righteous man-hating attitude. As if she hopes that her prisoners will fear her sisters if not their faithful execution beast. She even included a signature backhand of her long raven black hair that never failed to work before. However, she saw her captive with an obvious scowl on his face. Denied. By now, the Amazons were demanding blood for the foolish disrespect of their leader. And Hancock, after making an overly dramatic pose of near fainting, shouted out, "Sisters. I want their blood flowing onto the spikes this instant." It was true. To add more danger to the prisoners placed in the Colosseum, there were large metal spikes in a pit surrounding the inner arena. Starting with that disgusting wild animal they summoned to their aid, now the crowds were going wild and the pirates were on edge again. Marigold and Sandersonia in their reptile states turned their snake eyes towards Nola and flanked the massive serpent, who could only turn her head in a vain attempt to decide who to deal with first. But that was not necessary when, "Nola, control. Am I?" Luffy shouted and Nola stiffened before suddenly vanishing right before everyone's eyes. Just as she had appeared, the giant snake disappeared all the same. The two snake sisters were disturbed but their battle experience told them to still focus on the targets still present only for them to notice that only Luffy was in their eyesight. His cohorts were no longer by his side and back. It all spelled an ambush with that disappearing act successfully capturing their attention even for that brief moment. Then came the sensation of a small creature climbing into their bushy hair. Negatibu horo, negative hollow, Marigold stiffened and seized forward when a dozen cartoonish ghosts charged right through her giant salamander form. She then fell on her face. muttering words of self-hate and wishing to be something small and insignificant. Perona was cackling along at the pathetic state of an otherwise intimidating creature. Marigold, Sandersonia was shocked like the rest of the Amazons. The crowds could not make any sense of what just happened to one of their strongest warriors. Upon seeing the ghost girl laying on Marigold's fallen form as if to show off her victory, Sandersonia saw red. Die. Conniving wrench. However, she did not get close enough to Perona when these words were uttered right into the giant snake's ear. Sonda Conran, Thundermess, in an instant, right in the middle of a cloudless sky, several thunderbolts struck Sandersonia. She screamed something terrible for the awful pain for a moment that seemed to last forever. Thankfully, it did not, and the giant snake woman was looking like a massive cinder before falling onto his older sister Marigold. This time, it was Nami who was enjoying the moment of easy victory against seeming one of the more powerful Amazons, all by herself. There was also the mental note to thank Luffy for all he did to help her get this good. The crowds were still reeling in from all the shock. It just doesn't add up. These intruders were supposed to have been killed already. And yet they made their own spectacle of not only the giant black cat but also two of their strongest warriors. All there is left is the strongest Amazon, their queen. Everyone turned to Hancock, expecting her to assure them that their prisoners will still die. But she did not speak a word. It seemed that she is too outraged to speak. However, before anyone could make a comment, Hancock stood up from her snake throne with a finger on her lips. She made a deep smooching sound before drawing out what could only be a large pink heart resting on her finger. The Amazons were baffled this time. They have seen the effects of the Mero no mi. Love fruit. Before, but never this. Luffy narrowed his eyes and silently motioned for his companions to move behind him, which they did without question. She then pulled on the side facing her, Shiribu arrow, slave arrow. A barrage of red-colored arrows literally shot out from the opposite side of the large heart, pelting the target area with projectiles that turned anything they touched to stone. This made the crowd scream with fear. They almost thought that, along with the prisoners, the two Snake Sisters will be hit by those arrows. Instead, they were repelled by some unseeable force and landed far away from the present targets. And yet, in spite of the new trajectory of the arrows, not a single one came close to those in the crowds. While the Amazons taking a slight breath of relief and confusion, Luffy spoke up. Hancock, that was a foul move. Not just for putting your sisters in the line of fire because of your fit, but how you terrorized your people. Now doesn't that sound familiar? With his dormant palm still out, as if it had something to do with that repulsion of red arrows, the young captain stared up to the Shichibuki. Or perhaps you are showing just how much of a scared child and a sore loser you really are. Otherwise, we are all wasting our time for a show run by a wrench posing as the world's most beautiful woman. By now, the Amazons had no more words to say. They were just too scared of this vile male that had spoken so outrageously to their queen and actually got away with. Hancock was as still as a statue with her face as if frozen with fear and anger. So, here's the deal now. You will fight me right here, right now. Luffy took the silence as an opportunity to try and settle this. He was getting tired of getting nowhere with these Amazons. If you win, kill us yourself. And if you win, Hancock couldn't believe she was actually letting this man lay down the law with her in front of her people, in her own kingdom, as if he was suddenly in charge. You call off your little soldiers, let me and my cohorts rest just one night, and in the morning, you will give us a boat to sail off this island. The best part is that there won't be any proof left that we were even here. You Amazons will never see us again. Luffy finished speaking and stared at the Snake Princess, daring her to speak her mind. The Amazons were still silent as the dead, but most of them hoped that Hancock will refuse and call for more warriors to kill their prisoners. However, Hancock let out a tired breath and spoke, I accept. XXXXX. Hancock walked down to the arena, ignoring the voices and cries of deny and protest from her people who finally found the ability to speak and shout. All she was focused on was that the vile male was somehow strong enough to let the unmoving body's odors down not towards the spikes but a lower level that also had railing. There, along with the man's cohorts, nothing could get in the way of their match. Once the uncomfortably silent moment ended with both fighters face each other on the arena. Luffy warmed up by cracking his knuckles and stretching out his arms before doing his legs while Hancock made herself get into the Amazon fighting stance. As much as her pride is telling her that going all out is an unnecessarily waste of strength, to defeat this lowly weak male, Hancock was listening to her instincts this time, and they say the opposite. That Luffy is an opponent that the queen hasn't faced in ages, holding back will be foolhardy. Hey! Luffy spoke up with a hint of annoyance that there was no clear signal to begin their spar. Since this is your home, your kingdom and your turf, and since you are a lady. Hancock gritted her otherwise clean white teeth. This male was making it difficult to see if he was mocking or complicating her. You can make the first move. That finally snapped her into focus and into a battle trance. How dare this lowly male treat this like a game? You will regret it. Hancock spoke up and charged at Luffy with near-blind speeds, yet the latter could clearly see the former is readying for a devastating seat kick from the right leg. Perfume Femoru, perfume femur. Unfortunately, for Hancock, Luffy moved when every cell in his body screamed for him to dodge. After the first sweep had missed, she tried another, but that was also dodged. After a few more had missed, she almost lost her cool and tried a downward stomp kick that Luffy had also dodged. But it was what came next that broke the silence. The ground where the kick had connected had shattered as pure stone, just as Hancock's previous victims of her Akuma no Mi. Amazing! Luffy proclaimed from where he moved to dodge that last attempt at his head, with true admiration and the excitement of a child who laid eyes on a new toy. You can actually turn your targets to stone before you break without your special beam? No wonder you made Shichibuki, lady. Now she was getting tired of her opponent somehow using a tone that is both complimentary and mockery. If dodging is all you are good at, then you will die before the sun sets. Hancock retorted, hoping to put down this slippery male who challenged her in front of her people. Luffy just let out a sigh at that remark. Fair enough, if you demand more then I will provide more. Just don't blink or it will hurt more. Then, to the horror of every Amazon witnessing, Luffy tucked in his right arm at the ready for the spring punch. Also, once that arm was completely tucked in, something black started to manifest around the fist. Gum Gum Suporingu Shadow Kuro, Gum Gum Black Spring Shot. In that split second, Hancock wanted to close her eyes to brace for this attack that almost broke the sound barrier. However, she still remembered what Luffy advised and steeled her eyes to try and see the fist heading towards her stomach faster than a cannonball. As much as she wanted to kick it, turn the punch into stone and watch it crumble, but somehow it sounded too slow to her instincts. And instead, she raised her arms to block it with the help of a little something to try and block the attack. Once that split second passed, the crowds watched that attack land on their queen and ultimately sent Hancock flying right into the railing behind her. The loud sound of a crash drew in their attention to see their champion in a bad state. But what got everyone to worry sick were the awful bruises littering both of Hancock's forearms. Never thought you would have to take a hit during your whole Shichibuki career. Luffy smirked at his work with a hand on his shaggy chin. After all, your enemies are either too bug-eyed or jealous to even fight seriously against the most beautiful woman in the world, so there was no need to even worry. You could make it in paradise, but the new world is still too dangerous for you, lady. What's your point? Hancock retorted in a truly venomous tone, just about out of patience. That and the pain in her arms were just rubbing salts on the metaphorical wounds. My point, Luffy answered with his own edge to his voice, is that while you are the queen of the Amazons, and every one of you is as strong as you are beautiful, that only makes you the strongest Amazon in the world, not necessarily the strongest woman in the world. Just the strongest one in the Calm Belt, in all the blue seas and maybe paradise. But not in the New World. Hancock had no energy to argue, she could barely get herself on her feet even with the help of the railings she landed on. That is where I intend to sail with my crew, which is why I have been asking to leave your island from the start. Luffy finished with a tired and slightly frustrated sigh. But you had to be a bigger kid than I can ever be and try to show off my death as a cheap show to your sheltered people. We could have been grown-ups about it and none of this embarrassment could have happened. Some responsible ruler you are, lady. The sarcasm in that last statement did not go over their heads this time. Hancock, at that time, had finally got to her feet while ignoring the aching pain in her arms. She barely had any energy left to speak when she forced herself to leap at Luffy almost like a leopard than a snake, with her hands out to grab something and strangle it. But her opponent still proved to be the better fighter. He moved out of the way at the last minute, used his left arm to seize Hancock by the elbow pits and the torso while his right arm locked in under her chin. This was the most effective way to subdue a snake. Cut off its movement and prevent its fangs from even reaching you. This all happened in an instant, and now Hancock was red in the face that she was caught like a wild animal. To add yet more insult to injury, she abandoned all grace and started to struggle and growl like a wild animal. The crowds did not have the energy anymore to protest this outrage. They just cried silently to how this intruder that they tried to place below them was making a fool out of their champion and queen. Stop, Hancock. Just stop. Don't hurt yourself more than you already have. This sham of a match does not need to go on. Luffy whispered in Hancock's ear with a gentle tone that contrasted the brute strength he was using to keep her in place. Can't you see that your people are hurting as well to see what you have brought onto yourself? Just end it right now. We can still walk away from this and the world won't ever find out. Never, Hancock shouted. I would never lose to another vile male again. Never. Then, in a split second that even caught Luffy off guard, Hancock released herself from the hold on her by shredding off her robe. While this shocked everyone, Luffy dropped the tattered dress and instantly slammed Hancock to the ground by her neck. You idiot! That scream shook the entire arena. The Amazons tried to hold on to their balance in their seats. Hancock had hoped she would turn the tide of the match with her escape, but now she was once again at Luffy's mercy. This time, instead of trying to calm her down, it looked like she was the prey caught by the predator. Have you finally lost it? Have you already forgotten the story of you and your sister's curse? Were you trying to turn your entire kingdom to stone? This shook the crowds to a full panic. It suddenly made sense to them while the vile male slammed down their queen to have her back face the ground. The eyes of the Gorgon were nearly revealed for all to gaze and turned to stone. And yet they voiced their confusion on why they were spared of this fate by the one they were cheering for his violent death. Besides, Luffy got their attention once again. You said it yourself. You and your sisters will rather die than to show what is on your backs. Hancock widened her eyes and stopped struggling. She tried to find a sign that Luffy was only saying so, like the rest of the eyes on. But those of her current captor show only just anger at her actions and genuine concern for her well-being. Before she could try to respond, as for the rest of you, Luffy addressed the crowds with a stern tone. And, as if the sky met his eye, an energy wave surged throughout the entire island. Hancock, from her position on the ground, saw her people stiffen before collapsing either on their backs or on each other while having all whitened look in their eyes with foam forming at the mouth. She had never seen this before but knew exactly what happened. Hancock had only heard of this mysterious and frightening power to make armies fall and kingdoms crumble with just a thought and a glance. And this intruder that she tried so hard to kill in a glorious fashion had shown it to her in an epic fashion. Luffy finally relaxed his hold on Hancock and got up only to sit on his lap with another tired sigh. With that done, I doubt we will ever get out of here. Not even moving from his spot, Luffy stretched his arm without looking to grab the almost tattered robe from the ground where he dropped it. Here, put it on before you catch a cold. We will need to talk in private. All the while, he handed over the robe without looking to a proximity that Hancock could easily reach. And she dressed herself in the robe immediately while wondering why her cheeks were getting warm. XXXXX later, in the Hancock's palace, young male, you really made a mess of things. It was an odd sight to finish up a whole day of shock and outrage, to see the same male intruder allowing an old crone use her cane made from a snake hit him on the shin. While the boy in question looked like he was trying to ignore it, biting his lower lip and everything, until he finally swiped the snake staff right out of her hand. The way she fell on her face was a bit amusing. Look lady, I got to respect my elders and all, but please stop before you give your good friend a migraine. You and him both. Luffy spoke to the little old lady who go up to see her snake staff break formation and hide behind his neckline. But I can look past it because you are the only Amazon, besides the queen, to have any common sense and aware of the outside world. You are Hancock's predecessor after all. Really, Nami and Perona looked over their captain's shoulder to get a better look at the little lady that apparently was the queen before Hancock's time. She is remarkably diminutive in height, with very thick lips, and is wrinkled from old age. She also wears some kind of sea green bubble belt apparently meant to hold up the spotted print short skirt that all Kuja wear. Also, like most Kuja, she wears a cape. Her hair is white and she wears a pink flower on the left side of her head. Yes girls. She was known as Empress Gloriosa. Luffy added in before turning to the old lady dusting off her clothes from her fall. Or do you prefer the name those maniacs outside gave you, Elder Nyan? Instead of an answer, the old lady literally got into his face. You don't the right to call me anything. You should have just let this spoiled brat kill you. Now we will be getting those vile men over to our island because you had to let loose that power burst. It was amazing on how she still had the energy and audacity to throw a fit that a little kid could get jealous of. Luffy just showed a deadpan look. Desperate times always call for desperate measures, Elder. I am aware of what could have happened. I am a man after all. I'm also a pirate, a lot like her. Gesturing towards Hancock who was on her luxurious bed while her faithful snake was uncoiled nearby. As it turns out, after everything that happened in the arena, she told them to accompany her to the Empress's chambers immediately. All the while, she tried to make her tattered robe fit and also ignore the fact that her sisters were carried along like oversized bags of potatoes. Enough, Hancock finally spoke and successfully got everyone's attention. I shouldn't be doing this, but I want to know. Luffy knew that Hancock was talking to him and instead of saying it out loud, his expression spoke, yeah? Why did you do it? Why did you try to hide what was on my back from my people? I suspected that you would want me to be exposed for trying to kill you. Why? Before Luffy could answer, Nami spoke up from all the tension. What's the big deal? Luffy-kun only looked for a second before you hid it. All I saw was your raven black hair. What's so bad about that? All the while, the navigator was hiding behind Luffy's back. She still feared Hancock a bit and she felt the most secure at her captain's backside. She knew that her lover will protect her. Hancock did not know how to describe what she was feeling after hearing what Nami said and how the latter was hiding behind the man. Although, it was true. The male only caught a glimpse of what was on her back before she hid it away with the bath water and immediately after that, he went to check on his cohorts. Perhaps she had jumped the gun, plain and simple? Come here and get a better look. Hancock finally spoke. Luffy turned to his companions who shrugged in a, why not, manner. They gently parted the curtains and saw that Hancock was once again naked from her neck to her waist. Luffy just scowled at this sight, wondering what the heck this was about. That was before Hancock turned to hide away her bust and moved her long black hair. There it was. A mark that was no tattoo but a mark. It was a simple and rather big one. It looked like the claw of a giant bird, with 3 toes up and 1 below. But Luffy knew that it wasn't a bird's claw mark or that of any animal. Nevertheless, Perona took her turn to speak behind his shoulder this time. What is wrong with it? Looks like nothing I have seen before. What's the deal? She could have asked more before Luffy placed a firm hand on her head with fingers around her crown. It's a very big deal, Ghost Girl. This pieces together everything. Luffy did his vague and mysterious tone again. That is a wretched mark, one that no one ever wants. It's a slave marker. That got the feeling of dread running down the spines of Nami and Perona along with the white of face. That is called the hoof of the celestial dragon. It's the favorite mark used by the world nobles. Young male, you really made a mess of things. It was an odd sight to finish up a whole day of shock and outrage, to see the same male intruder allowing an old crone user cane made from a snake hit him on the shin. While the boy in question looked like he was trying to ignore it, biting his lower lip and everything, until he finally swiped the snake staff right out of her hand. The way she fell on her face was a bit amusing. Look lady, I got to respect my elders and all, but please stop before you give your good friend a migraine. You and him both. Luffy spoke to the little old lady who go up to see her snake staff break formation and hide behind his neckline. But I can look past it because you are the only Amazon, besides the Queen, to have any common sense and aware of the outside world. You are Hancock's predecessor after all. Really, Nami and Perona looked over their captain's shoulder to get a better look at the little lady that apparently was the queen before Hancock's time. She is remarkably diminutive in height, with very thick lips, and is wrinkled from old age. She also wears some kind of sea green bubble belt apparently meant to hold up the spotted print short skirt that all Kuja wear. Also, like most Kuja, she wears a cape. Her hair is white and she wears a pink flower on the left side of her head. Enough, Hancock finally spoke and successfully got everyone's attention. I shouldn't be doing this, but I want to know. Luffy knew that Hancock was talking to him and instead of saying it out loud, his expression spoke, yeah? Why did you do it? Why did you try to hide what was on my back from my people? I suspected that you would want me to be exposed for trying to kill you. Why? Before Luffy could answer, Nami spoke up from all the tension. What's the big deal? Luffy-kun only looked for a second before you hit it. All I saw was your raven black hair. What's so bad about that? All the while, the navigator was hiding behind Luffy's back. She still feared Hancock a bit and she felt the most secure at her captain's backside. She knew that her lover will protect her. Come here and get a better look. Hancock finally spoke. Luffy turned to his companions who shrugged in a, why not, manner. They gently parted the curtains and saw that Hancock was once again naked from her neck to her waist. Luffy just scowled at this sight, wondering what the heck this was about. That was before Hancock turned to hide away her bust and moved her long black hair. There it was. A mark that was no tattoo but a mark. It's a very big deal, Ghost Girl. This pieces together everything. Luffy did his vague and mysterious tone again. That is a wretched mark, one that no one ever wants. It's a slave marker. That got the feeling of dread running down the spines of Nami and Perona along with the white of face. That is called the hoof of the celestial dragon. It's the favorite mark used by the world nobles. The room was filled with silence, uncomfortable silence. Hancock was shivering, either from being undressed with a breeze or how everyone present is still staring at her accursed back. Then she felt a warm hand over her smaller one, rubbing in a comforting way to help her release her raven black hair. Once she did, Hancock was expecting to feel a hand go down her arm or something, but instead, her replacement robe was placed on her shoulders. She didn't care that her hair was caught in it. You all saw it. Hancock got herself to break the silence. This is my greatest shame. The accursed mark that the celestial dragons gave me when they ordered my capture along with my siblings. By now, Sandersonia and Marigold have both awakened from their shameful defeat in the arena, but they weren't making a sound. They have nothing to say. They forced us into their twisted entertainment, made the 3 of us eat the Akuma no Mi. Devil fruits. To better appease them. I still have nightmares about them abusing us, laughing at us and threatening to do even greater harm to us, and. Hancock stopped in her rant when 2 strong arms wrapped around her waist. They matched the warm hands that eased her hold over her hair earlier. I don't want to dig up more bad memories, but please tell us. How did you and your sisters escape? Hancock looked up to Luffy, who only had concern in his eyes, as if comforting a scared child who ran away from home. Fisher Tiger. Hancock spoke up. For once since entering the Grand Line, Luffy looked confused. He was a fishman that made a name as a rebel and a hero to the fishmen on Fishman Island. He was also a pirate who only attacked marines that were carrying prisoners to be made into slaves for the celestial dragons. Then he did the most unbelievable act ever. Fisher Tiger climbed up the Red Line to reach the Holy Land of Mary Joie, to free all the slaves. This sealed the deal. Nami and Perona have heard about the Holy Land once or twice but never thought anyone would climb 10,000 feet to break in. Luffy had released Hancock from his grasp, making note of her groan about the lack of warmth, and returned to his original spot off the royal bed. "Did you see this fisher tiger as you were making your escape?" Hancock nodded. "We did. It was just for a moment while fires and screams surrounded us. The only thing on our minds were running away from the Holy Land. We did hear that somehow Fisher Tiger had also escaped Mary Joie's in spite of the destruction he caused. That was the last we heard of him. And while we never talked eye to eye, he was one of the few men that I respected." Hancock had this truly fond look in her eyes, almost like she misses this Fisher Tiger for ultimately releasing her and her sisters from slavery. Taking the hint that the rest of the story is ancient history, Luffy approached Hancock once again. "Sounds like there is truly more to you than meets the eye, Snake Princess." He gently moved his hand towards her head, noting how she was starting to shake with fear and nervousness. "But do you want to know what I think about all this?" Rather than a forceful tone, Luffy used a more comforting one as he raised Hancock's head by her chin to match eye to eye. She didn't need to speak to signal that she did want to know. "I think that this makes you more human than you let others think, because I hate the celestial dragons as much as you do." While the witnessing crowd thought nothing of those words, they started to echo throughout Hancock's mind. And only Luffy saw that her cheeks were getting warmer and redder while hearing her heartbeat accelerate. He had a feeling that for once in years, he had bitten off more than he can chew. XXXXX later that day, it was nightfall, and by then, the populace from the arena benchers have awoken from their abrupt loss of consciousness. Most of them were complaining about a shiver in their entire bodies that won't stop. Nevertheless, they still held a celebration for how vile man they all called for his death had spared them of the cursed Gorgon gaze. The ones who knew the truth did not have the heart to try and correct it. It was for the best that the majority of the Amazons be unaware of what was really on the backsides of their champions. "Wow, are all men such big eaters like you, Luffy?" One has to remember that most of the Amazons have never seen a man before. The impression they have is that men look like them but act more like animals. The Amazon that spoke had to know for herself while everyone was watching their guest of honor eat an entire prepared prime sea king meat dish in one long chew and swallow. After doing half the dish, Luffy engulfed the rest and forced it down his throat in a manner, unironically enough, like a snake. Not all of us, no matter how hard they try. Luffy had the manners to swallow before speaking and cracked a joke that the Amazons only laughed after seeing that it amused the other guests of honor who had never left Luffy's side the whole feat so far. "But I digress, it's your cooking that is so good that I cannot get enough of." Hollering like a jolly king, Luffy took Yi prime meat with some more sake to wash it down while passing along some smaller portions for Nami and Perona to enjoy. The ghost girl wasn't terribly picky and accepted anything that her captain shared with her, only for Perona to try and share a serving at least 3 times hers. Nami wasn't a meat lover, but she still had some protein while focusing more on the vegetable dishes, hoping there is some fruit too. The Amazons did not mind, they could tell their guests were enjoying the food. However, the one thing that was beginning to sour the mood was their insistence on touching and tugging at the skin of their guests, Luffy's the most of all. While the 2 girls tried to escape the harassment, Luffy just tried to enjoy his food. However, will you all knock that off? I can't even chew with you people tugging on my cheeks. That jolly mood was officially spoiled. Luffy had always hated it when others interrupted his eating. "We can't help it, we love to tug at your stretchy skin." The Amazons all said something of the sort right before they officially lost all control and begun to mod Luffy and his companions. It was getting to the captain so bad that he was about to repeat what he did back in the arena before he felt someone tug at his shoulder. Not to stretch his skin but direct him into some direction. If it will help lose the mob, Luffy followed that tug while seizing the 2 girls with him. Not that they seemed to mind when his strong arms snaked around their torsos. Turns out they were led to an exit to the dining hall, which allowed Luffy to truly take off onto the rooftops until the mob was no longer in sight. Luffy took the chance to sit down onto the roofs while still having Nami and Perona in tow. They were both glad to have escaped the harassment while also relieved that they are still in the embrace of their captain. "That was impressive there. You are quite agile for a male." The trio turned to the one who helped them get away from the chaos. Yet another one of the Amazons but not a part of the mob. "Thanks, for both the compliment and the helping hand back there, Miss Marguerite." Nami and Perona shift a little to better see the Amazon that is a bit plain but nevertheless attractive and young. Marguerite is a young Kuja lady who is tall for her age. She has short, unruly blonde hair, long slender legs, and a slim, curvaceous figure. She is currently wearing a pink floral dress that is barely holding in while only wearing an animal skin skirt that is barely showing any more of her skin. "You already got everything on me, huh? I couldn't believe the stories that you were a mind reader, but..." Marguerite had her arms on her shoulders as if an elder sister finding her little siblings in trouble. "Don't even try, but it's not entirely true." Luffy cut her off while getting up from a rather uncomfortable spot on the spine of the rooftop. "Call me a thought reader because that is where I am getting my dirt from. It was impressive that he said this with a straight face, while Marguerite can't help but notice that Nami and Perona were now glaring at each other almost like sisters fighting over a doll. Perhaps it was because Perona tried to piggyback on Luffy as he's standing up and Nami wanted that position too. Nevertheless, now do you have a place where we can crash? We need to be ready to ship out in the morning. Marguerite saw it as an understandable request and thought to her for a bit. We can try Elder Nyan's place. She prefers to live on the outskirts of town. She hates the noise of the morning rush. Nami and Perona stopped staring and looked at their captain. They ended up shrugging but show that they're up for it. Lead the way. While staying to the rooftops, it didn't take long at all to reach a house a lot like the ones in the center of the valley. It still looked homey and comfortable just for that one night. That is, if the owner will allow it. We meet again already, troublemaker. Elder Nyan spoke up from her chair on her cover balcony, reading the latest edition of the world news like an actual retired old lady. I thought you will be at the banquet soaking up all that praise. We were, but it got too frantic. Now we just need a place to rest and ship out first thing in the morning. Luffy responded, getting comfy with the chairs put out for visitors to settle on. One other thing. A newspaper is one of the last things I expect on an island where the natives don't ever leave unless they're pirates on Hancock's ship. We just pay for our newspapers like everybody else. Is that right, kitty cat? With a tender rub on her head, she purred while nodding right into that palm. If anyone could hear in, they could pick up a slight sound of annoyance. It must have been the increase in prices. This did get the old lady to chuckle. Well, now that I am no longer the Empress and too old to be a sailor, I need some other way to know what is happening in the world. It was at that moment, she opened a certain section of that edition that had nothing but bad news, news of war. The Marines sure are getting more reckless and desperate in these coming years. They're claiming that they have captured Fire Fist of the Shirahige, Whitebeard, pirates and… She lost her words when the paper was snatched straight out of her hands. How it wasn't torn to shreds had escaped everyone's minds. They are really doing this, how could they? Are they really that desperate? Do they realize what this will cause? Now Luffy was scaring everyone. He stared every challenge he faced, from the wannabes in the East Blue to the feared killers of paradise. He even had the audacity to strike a deal with the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. Talk casually to not 1 but 2 Yonko, 4 Emperors. And even talked smack to Sengoku the Buddha. And yet Luffy is mumbling with a look of fear in his eyes. Perona moved in to try and stabilize his shoulders, as if he was going to faint, while Nami tried her best to remove the newspaper that was causing the young captain so much pain and fear. After several attempts in vain, Luffy actually relaxed and allowed the paper to fall from his hands. It was when the paper landed that the very section was finally revealed. The details of his brother's capture at the infamous Impel Down prison, and that he will be delivered to Marineford, headquarters of the Navy, to be publicly executed. Before anyone could speak, Luffy slowly reached for his hat that had been hiding his sorrowful eyes, and pulled something from the red brand. It looked like a piece of paper that had been burned to a mere fraction of what its original size. Ace, while everyone else was troubled by the state of the paper piece, Gloriosa lived long enough to know what it meant, and she didn't have the heart to say it as Luffy's face said it all anyways. That was when he let out a tired sign, like he was about to do something he may regret later. Elder, I need to ask your Empress for a favor. When I doubt she will want to hear, but I need to try. Gloriosa glared at Luffy, testing how serious the latter was in making such a statement, seeing no waver. Fine. We will talk it out with that spoiled brat, but I cannot promise anything. With that said, and with Marguerite in tow, everyone headed through the valley town to try and avoid that mob. Hopefully those overeager Amazons had decided to head to bed instead. However, it was when they first arrived at the front door of the massive tower did bad news coming screaming out as a frantic Amazon native who spotted the guests. Elder Nyan, we need your help. The Snake Princess is sick in bed. XXXXX truly, Hancock is in bad shape. She was wearing a simple nightdress, but there was also a high fever along with several beads of cold sweat. Then there was the fact that Hancock kept clutching her right hand where the heart will be, as if it won't stop pounding. She must be worried it was trying to escape through her chest. Oh dear, this is not good at all. Gloriosa was allowed into the room while the others were ordered to stay outside in the hallway. Please, you got to add all of a sudden during the feast. We don't know what it is or how to fix it. The same Amazon that rushed out in a panic shouted out her concerns. There were the rest of the Gorgon sisters, but they had no idea either. They were just watching their sister in pain while their underlings tried to treat the symptoms. She refused to eat or drink anything and has been complaining about her fever and chest pains. Gloriosa took all that in while still focusing on the sick Empress. She definitely recognized this but had to make sure. Luffy is leaving in the morning, saying that out of the blue confused everyone until Hancock lunged from the bed while clenching her teeth. That statement had somehow caused a surge of pain in her chest. Granny Nyan, what the hell are you doing? That is only making our sister worse. Marigold demanded while Sandersonia was also growling. They wanted to know why they are not kicking out the annoying old lady, like they loved to do. The sisters forced down such thoughts when Hancock spoke weakly. Old Lady Nyan, it hurts so much, am I going to die? That caused the nearby Amazons to panic. They still loved their empress too much, for all her faults, to allow her to perish. Gloriosa answered in a truly grim tone. I am afraid so. I have seen plenty of cases before, it is truly lethal. Yet again, the room was filled with cries of outrage. Then how do we cure it? Elder Nyan, Empress could die any second and you are not helping. This was more or less what every witness was saying. But Gloriosa was still a former Empress herself. A room filled with angry Amazons was actually no big deal to her. I will make sure to tell Luffy and his crowd outside that you are not available. He needs to ask a favor of you. Gloriosa spoke up and made way to leave the room when Hancock suddenly stood high up on her bed. This shocked everyone. Where is Luffy? She spoke loud and clear, with both authority and gentleness at the same time, outside on a covered balcony, so high that one can see the entire island. Luffy was relaxed. For the sake of personal space, Nami and Perona were at a far-off corner of the balcony. Luffy himself asked them to give him some space to talk to Hancock. It didn't take long for the queen herself to walk out of her bedroom, with a reed forehead but still going strong. Hancock, they told me you were sick? Should you be in bed? Hancock felt her heartbeat rise to hear true concern in his gentle voice. But she still had an image to keep. As if some fever can keep me down. Luffy swore the entire village heard that outcry, but that wasn't his concern. Hancock, at the very least, looked embarrassed from it. What is this favor that you wanted to ask of me? You see, there is this pirate that sailed under Shirihige-sama but was captured. His name is Fire Fist Ace. He is someone special to me. He is still at Impel Down prison and Luffy tried to get his words out and finally sealed the deal. Can you help me get there? I need a way to get past the Marines blocking off any other sailors from even getting near the prison. After getting it out, he expected Hancock to blow her top and scream for real. Do you want me to answer the call to Marineford? That gentle voice caused Luffy to widen his eyes and direct all his attention onto Hancock, who hasn't even gotten upset the slightest, before he could respond. Sister, we told you he was a vile male. Out of a window to the balcony, both the Gorgon sisters and Gloriosa popped out their angry heads. Don't do it. Kill him for even thinking of forcing you to sail to where it hurts you the most. They ranted on and on until Hancock spoke. Enough. That effectively silenced the atmosphere and Luffy still waited with bated breath to hear Hancock's answer to his favor. If you need me to help you. The young pirate felt his heart racing and stomach flipping once he saw that Hancock had the look of a woman in love in her eyes as she finally answered, I will go wherever you wish. And for once, Luffy was speechless. Gloriosa, on the other hand, got over her shock and shouted. This is it, all the signs pointed to what was supposed to be impossible. The spoiled empress is in love. As they say, love is a hurricane. Where is Luffy? She spoke loud and clear, with both authority and gentleness at the same time, outside on a covered balcony, so high that one can see the entire island. Luffy was relaxed. For the sake of personal space, Nami and Perona were at a far-off corner of the balcony. Luffy himself asked them to give him some space to talk to Hancock. It didn't take long for the queen herself to walk out of her bedroom, with a red forehead but still going strong. Hancock, they told me you were sick? Should you be in bed? Hancock felt her heartbeat rise to hear true concern in his gentle voice. But she still had an image to keep. As if some fever can keep me down. Luffy swore the entire village heard that outcry, but that wasn't his concern. Hancock, at the very least, looked embarrassed from it. What is this favor that you wanted to ask of me? You see, there is this pirate that sailed under Shirihige-sama but was captured. His name is Fire Fist Ace. He is someone special to me. He is still at Impel Down prison and Luffy tried to get his words out and finally sealed the deal. Can you help me get there? I need a way to get past the Marines blocking off any other sailors from even getting near the prison. After getting it out, he expected Hancock to blow her top and scream for real. Do you want me to answer the call to Marineford? That gentle voice caused Luffy to widen his eyes and direct all his attention onto Hancock, who hasn't even gotten upset the slightest, before he could respond. Sister, we told you he was a vile male. Out of a window to the balcony, both the Gorgon sisters and Gloriosa popped out their angry heads. Don't do it. Kill him for even thinking of forcing you to sail to where it hurts you the most. They ranted on and on until Hancock spoke. Enough. That effectively silenced the atmosphere and Luffy still waited with bated breath to hear Hancock's answer to his favor. If you need me to help you. The young pirate felt his heart racing and stomach flipping once he saw that Hancock had the look of a woman in love in her eyes as she finally answered, I will go wherever you wish. And for once, Luffy was speechless. Gloriosa, on the other hand, got over her shock and shouted. This is it, all the signs pointed to what was supposed to be impossible. The spoiled empress is in love. As they say, love is a hurricane. Monkey D. Luffy. After all that worrying that Hancock will wake up the whole island, it turns out to be Nami who pulled it off. If I wasn't your lover, I will kill you for this. Robin was one thing in Perona I can live with, but this. Just how much women do you want? Luffy had a hard time explaining himself as his navigator was tugging at his rubbery cheeks, stretching them so much that speaking sounded more like gibberish. That and Perona was jumping in, pulling hard at Luffy's hair to add on the pain. Needless to say, that young captain is up for a rough night indeed. Meanwhile, inside the Empress's bedroom, what is happening to me? Hancock was a mess, and not just because of her red face. Every time I even think of Luffy, I feel like I must appease him. I agreed to go to Marineford without thinking it. I don't mind it, what's going on? Her head hurt with confusion. Gloriosa just felt a headache of her own that is sure to stay for a while. I once felt this when I was the previous Empress. In fact, it has happened to all our predecessors. Hancock actually paid attention as it was helping a bit with her mixed emotions. However, they were all more headstrong and stubborn than the both of us. They thought they were strong enough to hold in their emotions and refused to leave Amazon Lily to pursue the men they fell for. And all of them have perished instead due to their lovesickness. I, on the other hand, swallowed my pride and left the island to find the one I fell for. That saved my life. Hancock looked down on her legs. It didn't occur to her earlier. The pain in her chest had died and the fever cooled down a lot, but only when she left to see Luffy. So, if I don't do it, the love sickness will kill me. Gloriosa's face was serious and stern. That should be enough to answer the question. If Luffy leaves the island and goes on his way, the pain will return and will kill you for real. So, for the sake of this village and for your well-being, you will have to do this. The elder was not happy to say it, but it had to be said. Hancock could only nod calmly and slowly, with both her reason and her ego finally agreeing on something. They just didn't notice that Luffy was no longer getting yelled at by his mates. Things had gotten from heated to steaming. Thankfully, nobody had a good reason to investigate the moans and rumblings. XXXXX after an eventful night, dawn finally came. The entire village was seeing off Luffy and the girls as honored guests. They still felt guilty over how they cheered for the Straw Hats to put to the death, but at least they remembered to return Reimei Atami, Don Pain, and Uedoku Toge, Toxic Thorn, to their owners as well as the pair of pistols. They were all confiscated when Luffy surrendered peacefully to Hancock's mercy. Nami had her trusty battle staff returned while Perona had nothing on her to be confiscated. Thankfully, it didn't take long for their queen to show with a fur cloak that made her look even more regal. And Hancock looked imposing and undeterred like a statue until she made eye contact with Luffy. That made her blush and turn away. I can't even look at him without acting like this. You are looking great tonight, lady, almost like you are going to kick some bastard's ass. Luffy spoke with no grace towards the queen of the Amazons. Nami and Perona just shrugged it off with an amused nod of their heads. That bad boy attitude only increased their captain and lover's charm in their eye. They all ignored some of the more stuck-up Amazons demanding that he apologize for being so casual and address their queen better. That is, until Hancock spoke up. Jay, just call me Hancock. That really silenced the Amazons on how their queen was behaving, but the guests on board didn't seem to mind. In fact, they kind of liked this version of the queen considering they made a lousy first impression upon their entrance to the queen's baths just yesterday. Sure thing, Snake Princess. Luffy responded with a roguish smirk that threatened to make Hancock faint with her heart swelling. XXXXX much later, a marine ship was in sights. Next to it was a dead sea king with a large hole in its flesh. This was a testament to the one running the ship, a vice admiral. Speaking of whom, he was seen still on his ship, feeding off cooked sea king meat using his sword as if a skewer. He stopped in his eating when he saw the same pirate ship from a couple of days ago. Boa Hancock, you have returned. It was actually a familiar face of a stern man that took his job very seriously, Vice Admiral Momonga. He was the only marine that had evaded the fate of his hopeless crew from falling to Hancock's beauty and her Akuma no Mi. Devil fruit. Soon after, his hand had long healed from his self-stab. I trust you have decided on your answer. Shut your mouth, male. Hancock retorted with her man-hating persona while walking down to the deck of the still marine ship. Luffy and his companions were nowhere in sight. I have thought about it and I will join your little war on 2 conditions. 1. You will stay true to your word regarding Amazon Lily. Hancock effectively acted like she now owed the ship, not that Momonga tried to argue. 2nd, I want to see this prisoner that you are putting on display to begin your war in the first place. I want to see just who you dare use to provoke Whitebeard. Not even waiting for a response, Hancock headed over to the captain's quarters. Momonga still had something to ask. Wait a moment. What about my crew? I can't sail this ship anywhere without them. Hancock stopped in her tracks and faced the crew still in the same shameless forms of showing hearts and reaching out to the beauty they as she may hated. They are still needed to sail a ship. She walked to one of them and blew a small kiss, creating a heart and whispered, Mizamio, awaken. In an instant, the entire crew was depetrified. They still cried out for Hancock until they realized that she was no longer in sights and their commanding officer was even more angry than before. Just get underway. We sailed to the prison Impel Down as the Shichibuki requests. With that tone of voice, Those hopeless Marines got to their post with no questions asked. That is until. Keep your distance, vile man. I don't need this ridiculous notion that you call chivalry to treat me like a helpless woman. Hancock was about to let herself into the captain's quarters until a Marine tried to be a gentleman and get the door for her. Instead, he got a good broken nose with the door opening all the way, slamming into his face. The next time you try something like this, I will kill you. Too bad that her threat couldn't be taken seriously with Hancock actually facing upward, refusing to even look at the foolish Marine. The rest of the crew got the memo and focused on their roles while Hancock huffed and slammed the door shut behind her. Inside the cabin, Hancock locked the door and sat on the couches with a frustrated sigh before turning to her right with the blush returning. All clear, Luffy. And company. As if a clear sheet had been taken off, Luffy appeared along with Nami and Perona. The navigator found that using mirages as a disguise was effective while a bit risky if noticed. Great job back there, Snake Lady. I thought for sure they would have noticed us. Wiping off a few pieces of sweat from his forehead, Luffy sat down on the couch with a grateful smile set towards the love-struck Empress. The latter thought that her heart was going to escape her chest for real. Yet it was no trouble, Luffy. Hancock uttered while rubbing her arm. Those maggots out there are too easy. They will never know. It was kind of cute to see a grown woman acting like a girl on a mission. This made her occupants chuckle at the look, except that Hancock could only heard Luffy's chuckle. XXXXX. It was a lengthy journey until the lookout announced that the great prison was in sights. It was a dismal place for sure. The clouds were dark and the sea was still in spite of being in the Grand Line. Almost like the facility somehow scared the ocean water into submitting to the cruelty that the prison was feared for by all, criminal or civilian. Nevertheless, the Marines were still at work to get their ship into the harbor while Hancock had left the quarters she confiscated from the Vice Admiral. On that note, the sea was now what made the trip agonizing for the crew. It was the behavior of their special passenger. She would not go out at all, and when a passing sailor could almost hear voices aside from Hancock in the cabin, she will bang on the walls calling that listener a vile perverted male. It didn't help that the entire crew and Vice Admiral was truly all male. When it came to meal times, Hancock surprised everyone with demands for mostly meat dishes with a few salads and fruit on the side to be delivered by trolley inside, not allowing anything else inside. One sailor said that he will grow a mohawk like Momonga if Hancock eats it all by herself, right before she pushed it out claiming to have devoured the whole thing. The entire crew was sporting shocked looks and mohawks on their heads. Nevertheless, she walked out of the cabin like the queen she was and didn't even bother to close the door behind her. She was just tired of the cabin as being the best place on the ship, and even that wasn't up to her standards. Luffy and his friends were not be seen, and somehow, they were never found by the crew the entire trip. Once the ship had reached the harbor, a boarding plank was placed and Hancock helped herself, not even bothering to address the Marine who laid it out her. The Snake Princess at least had the courtesy to await her escort to drop down on harbor to walk her inside the prison. Once the outer gate opened, both pirate and Marine were greeted with an unusual man accompanied by a woman in a military officer uniform, complete with sunglasses. "Welcome," he said in the darkness, "to my Impel Down." That was an interesting thing to say, but the guard woman scolded the rather tall man. "Oh, sorry, I am ahead of myself. My name is Hanayabal, Vice Warden of Impel Down." Hanayabal is a large pot-bellied man that resembles a cross between a devil and an Egyptian pharaoh. His brow ridge is shaped like horns, his chin is shaped like a pharaoh's false beard, and he wears a nemes with yellow and green stripes, the striped headcloth worn by pharaohs, with his hair coming from inside the nemes. His face in particular is designed in such a way that it looks like a Hanya mask. He wears demon-like wings on his back and also carries a pitchfork around, another common symbol linked to the devil. "I am head jailer Domino. I will be accompanying you with Vice Warden to see the head warden." Domino is one of the high-ranking officers of Impel Down, as well as the most professional seeming. She is a slim woman with long, wavy blonde hair, with a tuft always covering her right eye, the left being obscured by a pair of sunglasses. She wears a modified version of the militaristic-style uniform of many of the staff, consisting of a short pale brown double-breasted jacket worn like a dress over a white shirt with a black tie, all paired with brown boots and dark gloves far longer than the ones worn by the other members of the staff. She also wears a hat with the symbol of Impel Down. "Ah yes. I have heard of Magellan, who truly protected this prison's reputation to be unescapable." Momonga chimed in to show his respect to the head of prison authority. Boa Hancock couldn't care less, until Domino approached her. "Pardon, Snake Princess, we need to do a thorough inspection before we proceed." Somehow, no one noticed how Hancock flinched at the idea of being checked. "Don't worry, the men won't see any more of you than they already have." That did not make Hancock feel any better, but signed with much reluctance to do it anyways. Domino gently tugged at Hancock's arm, guiding her to a separate room. While the guard woman was locking the door for privacy, she looked up to see that the Den Den Mushi, transponder snail, on the wall had turned to stone with hearts in its eyes. That was the security system, with the snails connected to monitor rooms to spot anything out of the ordinary. Boa Hancock, what is the meaning of? Domino stopped in her speech when something came out of the floor in front of her. Boo! It was Perona, and she knows how to put on a frightening face that got Domino to scream out loud. Before the guard woman could react any further, negativo horo, negative hollow, from Perona's hand, a familiarly cartoonish ghost pierced through Domino. Immediately, the guard woman was on the ground mumbling all negative statements, completely harmless. Good thing you had me scout ahead in my hollow form. I remembered to alter that special one. That woman won't remember what happened when it wears off in a good hour. Perona proceeded to float over towards the snake princess and called, "All clear." Captain Hancock, who hadn't lost her stoic look prior, had suddenly got a terrible blush on her face. It could be because of her clothes moving a tad erratically before the one and only Monkey D. Luffy emerged from underneath the ends of the robes. In his arms was no other than Perona's actual body, limp and lifeless as the side effect of Perona's powers. Great, I almost lost my grip back there. Sorry about that, snake princess. For a pirate that had just hitched a ride on the most beautiful woman in the world, he is sure a gentleman when he is not acting like a rogue. Hancock tried to keep her growing excitement from the attention while Luffy waited Perona to return to her physical body, offering a helping hand once the eyes opened again. There was just one CFOR, only to appear through a minuscule crack in the room as a bolt of lightning. This prison is sure creepy and wholesome, but I did find some points we can use as a backup. Nami was doing a good layout with her electric abilities and was on edge to actually be breaking into the prison to end them all. It was only because Luffy was a handsome rogue that actually cared about his lovers that convinced her to take the chance. Even in the worst of times, her captain will get them out. XXXXX later, honestly, Domino grumbled as she still dusted off any dirt from her uniform. If you didn't want the Den Den Mushi to see us, you should have said so. It is still procedure. Hancock held in her snicker that the guard truly did not remember what really happened in that room. Hannibal and Momonga just looked at each other with disbelief, imaging all kinds of nonsense in that room that kept them waiting. Things were quiet until they finally reached the warden's office. Domino spoke up while opening the massive doors. We must inform all of our visitors to be mindful of our warden Magellan. She handed over breathing masks to both Hancock and Momonga, for he had long eaten the Doku Doku no Mi, venom fruit. It allows him to conjure and generate all kinds of poison, which has led him to adopt a poison diet. While poison and venom cannot kill him, it gives him terrible diarrhea. He spends 10 hours reliving himself a day while sleeping 8 hours a night, so he only works 4 hours a day. It was like listening to a tour guide of a chemical factory. Right on cue, the sound of a toilet flushing was heard. The guards monitoring the room stood up straight when a giant of a man with the face of a devil emerged. This was the warden of Impel Down, Magellan. Magellan is a large man, about 3 times the height of a normal human. He has a face that resembles a mandrill, with very sharp teeth and a thick beard. He wears bat wings and horn-like ornaments on his head, the latter of which he can pull out and use as weapons. Underneath those horns, he has short black twin-tail styled hair. Overall, Magellan resembles a devil. While most guards wear a white-colored uniform, Magellan wears a black-colored suit with a red shirt underneath. His suit features more buttons than those of his subordinates. Draped over his right shoulder is a piece of rope. He wears what appears to be the standard cap of Impel Down workers.
Phew, that last one was tough. Magellan muttered as he staggered along before yelling out loud, "Oh! I hate bright light. I wish it was darker around here."
Then none of us will get any work done around her. Warden, Hannibal shouted. Why, when I am warden, I will make sure there is only darkness where the prisoners will rot. Oh sorry. Once again caught in his ambitious daydreaming, the vice warden stopped himself in his tracks. Too bad that Magellan did not appreciate it. My subordinates have so little respect for me. I do good work here and set an example of fighting venom with venom, but nobody gets it. After lamenting, he let out a purple-ish mist that prompted everyone except for Hannibal to put on their gas masks. Stop that. Your breath is poisonous. Are you trying to kill us? Only Magellan laughed at the near-death poisoning of his own vice warden, commenting that no one will miss such a man with too much ambition in place of obedience. Now your tone is poisonous. This was starting to look like a demented comedy pair. Too bad for this act. Hancock was not going to have any more of this. How dare you poison an empress without asking for permission? You should feel ashamed for your insolent use of venom. All the while, standing over the large man in her pose of her face facing the ceiling. Nevertheless, Magellan did not mind at all, so nothing was done to stop this. That was until Domino scolded Hannibal for sitting in the warden's seat did the massive man snap out of it. He wailed something bad on the vice warden's head to get out of his chair just in time to answer the Den Den Mushi. It was the guards confirming that a ride was ready to take their visitors to where the special prisoner was being held.
After finishing the call, Magellan finally got serious and led the group to a large elevator that had a car perfectly tall enough that even the warden can easily fit in. While Hancock kept a stoic and professional look on her face, she was feeling unsure and anxious inside. At this point, she no longer can help her friends that she helped sneak in. As it turns out, in the corner of her eye, she saw them in the rafters. Luffy gave her a roguish smile and thumbs up that made her heart race and her face heat up. And somehow, seeing Nami and Perona do the same just mad feelings swell even more. It got so bad that when Momonga noticed, Hancock had to pretend to be affected by the elevator moving to explain her blush. At least the Vice Admiral was too professional to be nosy about it and scoffed.
XXXXX meanwhile, hey, you got out these bars just like that. What about the rest of us? Why didn't you say you could do that? It was the first level of the Impel Down and there was already some commotion. There were yells of unfairness and outrage over a certain prisoner walking out of the cell.
Why should I? The rumors of this place being hell were too true for my taste. Besides, I am glad they put me on the first level. It is the safest and the closest to the exit. Nuts to those Marines who arrested me for simple illegal treasure hunting and trespassing. At closer inspection, this man was familiar.
While he was enjoying the freedom from his cell and popping his joints, this man noticed that suddenly the noise died down. This gave him something to grin about. What? Now see that I am the only one who is getting out of this hellhole. Good for you, Oomph. Only to run into someone else's chest.
No, you're not. You are staying and leading us to the next floor below. There is someone we are going to break out. You just saved us the trouble, Buggy. The face full of makeup and big round nose was being stretched with shock at who stood in his way of escape.
Mugiwara. Strawhat. Stop that, your breath is poisonous. Are you trying to kill us? Only Magellan laughed at the near-death poisoning of his own vice warden, commenting that no one will miss such a man with too much ambition in place of obedience. Now your tone is poisonous. This was starting to look like a demented comedy pair. Too bad for this act, Hancock was not going to have any more of this. How dare you poison an empress without asking for permission? You should feel ashamed for your insolent use of venom. All the while, standing over the large man in her pose of her face facing the ceiling. Nevertheless, Magellan did not mind at all, so nothing was done to stop this. That was until Domino scolded Hannibal for sitting in the warden's seat did the massive man snap out of it. He wailed something bad on the vice warden's head to get out of his chair just in time to answer the Den Mushi. It was the guards confirming that a ride was ready to take their visitors to where the special prisoner was being held. After finishing the call, Magellan finally got serious and led the group to a large elevator that had a car perfectly tall enough that even the warden can easily fit in. While Hancock kept a stoic and professional look on her face, she was feeling unsure and anxious inside. At this point, she no longer can help her friends that she helped sneak in. As it turns out, in the corner of her eye, she saw them in the rafters. Luffy gave her a roguish smile and thumbs up that made her heart race and her face heat up. And somehow, seeing Nami and Perona do the same just mad feelings swell even more. It got so bad that when Momonga noticed, Hancock had to pretend to be affected by the elevator moving to explain her blush. At least the Vice Admiral was too professional to be nosy about it and scoffed. XXXXX meanwhile, hey, you got out these bars just like that. What about the rest of us? Why didn't you say you could do that? It was the first level of the Impel Down and there was already some commotion. There were yells of unfairness and outrage over a certain prisoner walking out of the cell. Why should I? The rumors of this place being hell were too true for my taste. Besides, I am glad they put me on the first level. It is the safest and the closest to the exit. Nuts to those Marines who arrested me for simple illegal treasure hunting and trespassing. At closer inspection, this man was familiar. While he was enjoying the freedom from his cell and popping his joints, this man noticed that suddenly the noise died down. This gave him something to grin about. What? Now see that I am the only one who is getting out of this hellhole. Good for you, Oomph. Only to run into someone else's chest. No, you're not. You are staying and leading us to the next floor below. There is someone we are going to break out. You just saved us the trouble, Buggy. The face full of makeup and big round nose was being stretched with shock at who stood in his way of escape. Mugiwara. Strawhat. Ow. Ow. OWW. Cut it out. The prisoners groaned and banged on their cells, demanding that noise to stop. Too bad for them, it has been going on a good while. I am not helping you for any of your shit. I need to leave before they put me in one of those sea prism stone cells. Keep yelling and you will have to share one with us, Buggy. Nami calmly shut up the clown pirate who was being dragged by the ear but not in the traditional way. You see, he was literally a mess of body parts tied up with rope with the exception of his feet that were in Luffy's hands. As he had long ate the bara bara no mi chop chop fruit, this was more of a gag than a gruesome sight. Especially when he was complaining and being dragged on the hard stone floor of the corridor that they had been trekking for quite some time. Look, Buggy, we need to get the very bottom of the prison and we need someone that can take us to the first door down. And I know that you have seen it. Luffy spoke up, not any more amused than his companions. I have heard rumors that you can read minds, Mugiwara. So annoying. Buggy mumbled out loud and this time, Luffy did not even try to correct him. Those rumors will stick for a while longer for sure, but is it infamy?
This. Luffy answered, which caused his party to stop in their tracks to see what it was.
It looked like a band to wear on your arm, but the band was connected to a pair of orbs of some kind. I didn't bring it up before, but I noticed that one of the zombies back in Impel Down reminded me of a dead legend named Captain John. During the age before the Pirate King, it was said that this pirate was one of the richest in the whole world. His fortune was supposedly buried on an idea, but no map was ever recovered. Perona and especially Nami were intrigued in this story but still wondered what the armband had something to do about it. Buggy on the other hand couldn't believe what was in front of his eyes. That is until Luffy motioned towards the band with his other hand that sealed the deal. That's because this is the map to the treasure. Made in a way that only those who know what the map is can find it, and our captive does know.
At this point, even though she was his girlfriend, Nami still hasn't figured out Luffy completely. But he was no liar, just a young pirate who is an amazing captain and lover. Buggy had stars in his eyes though. You are really giving me that. But why? I am a pirate aiming for the end of the Grand Line, Buggy, not a treasure hunter. We will make money in our own time even after our adventure on Sky Island. Luffy answered. You can keep this map and try to find Captain John's treasure if you want. Shanks owns you big time still from when he doped you in eating that Akuma no Mi devil fruit on Roger's ship.
Buggy couldn't decide to thank or shush Luffy for that. So, he didn't say a word, just pointed down a certain hallway that his captors took. The only thing worth mentioning were strange blue gorilla-like creatures with giant axes trying to ambush them. Half of them were fried alive and the other hand were on the ground, muttering negative things in their own tongue. Yet the trip was still quiet until...
Behold, Buggy said with a foreboding tone, letting his captors take in the truly gruesome sight. The true nature of the level 1 of Impel Down. Forcing the prisoners to dwell in a forest literally made of blood-red shards making the trees and grass. There are even poisonous spiders that crawl on the blades down there. The prisoners are forced to run while getting cut in all directions. Hence the name, Crimson Hell.
Screams were heard throughout. The smell of blood was even stronger. It almost blocked out how there were occasional, faint gunshots. Shows that the guards see this as entrainment, a way to kill boredom, both business and pleasure. Just another example of the government being as cruel and despicable as the pirates they hate. But that was not Luffy's concern. There was no helping these prisoners. What he wanted was beyond the Crimson Hell. Is it in the center of the forest? Buggy, the clown pirate nodded. Stupid Mugiwara. One way for those unfortunate souls to escape the never-ending cuts and blood spilling is a giant hole at the center of the forest. It leads to the level below us, said to be worse still. Luffy nodded with that answer. Nami, release him. He is our ride down. As much as she hates it, Nami couldn't argue with that. Buggy is the only one on that level and all the levels that can trek the Crimson Hell without any actual damage. After reassembling himself with the exception of his feet, he rubbed the soreness out of his wrists and joints once again. Looking down, he let out a disgruntled sigh. Just get it, Mugiwara. With a mighty push, Buggy dove down to the thorn blades below. For once, the coward didn't even look scared. Blades and any other sharp objects cannot harm him anymore, so there is no need. It was when he felt a great weight on his back that Buggy grunted and yet was able to hove right above the forest ground so much. Straw hats. This is uncomfortable enough as it is. Sorry, Luffy said with a deadpan tone. Nami and Perona tried to get a good grip. There was hardly any room left after one is on board. Now move. Buggy grumbled before moving forward, gliding just above the red blades. Normally he would have to wait for his feet to catch, the only pieces that don't fly, but this time they are on board too. Buggy went along like a rocket, making sure not to hit any of the trees made out of the thorn blades. Soon enough, while ignoring all the prisoners screaming and groaning in pain, begging to be spared, they found a massive hole at the very center like they thought they would. Not away to the surface but down the next floor of hell, even worse than a forest of thorns. Looking down at it, Luffy got up and stabilized himself. This it. My companions and I will move on. Turning to their ride, he tossed the strange bracelet from before. There, I complete my end of the bargain. You are free to do whatever you want, Buggy. Good luck. Luffy scooped up Nami in his right arm and Perona in his left and leapt right into the hole. The clown pirate just stared down with the treasure map in hand but not really sure on where to do next. XXXXX later. Gum gum no fusin, gum gum balloon. The corridors echoed with the cry of a technique that inflated a man's belly to the point that it broke a very long fall. It was followed by the sound of something bouncing up and down a couple of times before the sound of feet landing on the concrete floor. Huh. Looks a lot like the floor above. Perona remarked while trying to see further down the dark corridors with her hand above her brow. She wanted to say something to add but Luffy and Nami grasped her shoulders and shushed her. Appearances are always deceiving. We can't see them but I can tell that there are strange animals here. No doubt to feast on any prisoners who want to escape the forest only to be food down here. Luffy said before suddenly turning behind him to reveal something of a giant chicken with reptile legs and mouth. Like that one. But the pirate captain was not worried, just annoyed with the beast. It suddenly looked terrified before falling to the ground with whited out eyes. What is there to worry about with you here, Captain? Luffy and Nami rolled their eyes. Of course, Perona decided to flirt at this time and place. Whatever, ghost girl. We need to find the way down to the 3rd level. I can pick up Ace but it's faint. He is not on this level. Luffy muttered out loud and finally picked a direction to try, with his companions close behind. After a while of walking, they started to wonder if there is a way down as all they saw were row after row of cells with prisoners not making a sound. Until Luffy noticed something familiar. Hold it. He said out loud that halted his companions. Luffy walked in front of a cell that looked no different than the others but he didn't care about that. Hello again, Mr. 3. Perona didn't know that name but Nami sure did and hurried to see for herself. The man from Little Garden had changed, grew facial hair and his ridiculous hairstyle had withered. But there was no mistake, it was the Doru no Mi, wax fruit, user himself. Mugiwara. How flattering that you remember me after how you left me for dead. Not only was the man once confident in his intellect and skill with his Akuma no Mi looking defeated, he even sounded the part. He wasn't even trying to escape or get up from the bench in his jail cell. I am not going to ask why you are here. But I want nothing to do with OWW. I am here for a personal reason, Mr. 3. Luffy is having a moment with a prisoner in his hand, pressing against the sea stone bars of the prison cell. As for you, I know a certain ambitious clown who wants out of this hell but he has no means of escaping. You have both the brains and the ability to make keys to these cells filled with prisoners. Get where I am going. Luffy finished while directing everyone's attention to the other cells in sight. The prisoners were actually rowdy instead of quiet. Apparently, Luffy didn't even try to keep his voice down about keys to prison cells. But what good is it to open the cells if the guards were to catch us? Mr. 3 whimpered out. The looks of the prisoners unsettled him. That was until the sound of bodies thumping on the ground were heard throughout. Some even landed in front of the cells. Mr. 3 saw those to be the same guards he brought up along with a few strange gorilla-like creatures with axes besides them. I only got in here thanks to a new friend keeping the bosses of this place occupied. They won't even notice the guards sleeping on the job. You just find a man in a prison suit with a big red nose and tell him you are the key to getting him and the others out. Such usefulness is needed outside rather than rotting in a cell. Luffy said all in one breath. If things go south, we can still count on you to buy some more time while we come with reinforcements. By then, the rusted gears were running in Mr. 3's head and nodded in understanding. Luffy finally released the hold on the prison uniform that was starting to chafe and motioned for something to be handed over. Oh, got it. Mr. 3 felt the effects of the prison bars fading, allowing him to conjure up a simple-looking key made from wax and gave to Luffy. I know you were listening, now pay close attention. I am only doing this once. With that said, Luffy inserted the key that still retained its shape and successfully unlocked the jail cell containing Mr. 3, letting the door open on its own. The prisoners cheered at such a beautiful sight. Get busy if you want to walk out of here, Mr. 3. My company and I will be heading downstairs still. Good night. Luffy said to the grateful prisoner who now sees that he has desperate customers literally reaching out for more of those keys. The criminal genius got right to it, creating key after key and throwing them into reach of the prisoners. Amazingly, none of them fought for the right to unlock the bars. They were all equally excited to be free, I guess. None of that ever bothered Luffy or the two women by his side. They still had a way to go to get to their destination. Until they ran into a massive beast that could be described as one thing. A Sphinx. The Sphinx is a large and powerful creature with a dark humanoid face and a winged, leonine body. It also has a scar above its right eye. Are you going to kill this thing, or what, Captain? Perona asked, merely curious why Luffy hadn't acted yet, not even with the welcome wagon from before. Luffy merely gave her a rogue smirk that caused her heart to flutter a bit, even when Nami bobbed his nose to be serious about this. Sorry kitty cat, but no, we don't need to bother. After all, this thing is in front of our way down to the 3rd level. The Sphinx heard that last quip and got up to show all its glory while looking on the intruders as a few delectables to snack on. Besides, I always wanted to try out this nice technique T-Bone taught me. He took out his rapier Yudoku Toge Toxic Thorn for a slash, aiming at the ground beneath the Sphinx. The massive beast got ready to move after the attack while Nami and Perona did the same when Luffy slashed at the stone floor with a clean cut that took a perfect corner before making another before completing a perfect square. Chokaku Senko. Bone Swar, right angle flash. Bone Swar. Right on cue. The floor gave away with the Sphinx falling down with it. The wings did not help stop its fall. Nami and Perona looked down, wondering what next when they felt a familiar arm around their torsos and it hit them. Luffy was going to jump down after the Sphinx. Rather than screaming why, They just trusted their captain had a plan to make at least a safe landing and dove their heads into his shoulders to brace. It only took a short while before the Sphinx to land on the floor below. However, it wasn't just the beast that alerted the pirates that they ha heat. Quickly, take off any heavy or warm clothes before heat stroke settles in. Luffy removed his coat as well as his shirt while leaving his trousers on. Nami and Perona were hesitate for just a second until the heat hit them hard. For the sake of rescuing their captain's brother, they were going to endure the prisoners seeing their curves, with only a bra covering their dignity. And yet the one that hated the heat the most and the intruders even more, the Sphinx, got up and was more determined to eat those pirates that collapsed the ground to floor too. Too bad for the beast that an even greater predator was nearby, hidden in the long thick sleeve of the captain's coat. Thanks Nola. Give that stupid thing a good squeeze. Luffy said while stroking Nola's scales while the Sphinx struggled to even breathe under the massive snake's hold. After a bit of struggling, a loud crack can be heard with the Sphinx no longer moving or even breathing. With the prey now dead, Nola swallowed it whole with her impressive jaw and throat muscles. At least the Sphinx was tasty in the end, judging by the satisfied look on Nola's face as her master and his friends mounted her head. Forward Nola, we still have a long way to go.
XXXXX. Meanwhile, why are you doing this? A tired, weary voice can be heard in a large cell sitting on its own in a massive room. Why is one of the Shichibuki, 7 warlords of the sea doing in a cell like this, Jinbei? A man bound and chained turned to his fellow prisoner who was a lot bigger than him and bundled with chains. The larger man was, son of the sea, Jinbei, a fishman pirate, and the smaller man is Ace.
Jinbei is a large blue whale shark fishman and the current tallest member of the Straw Hat Pirates. He has a stocky build similar to that of a sumo wrestler and a face that is commonly associated with various Japanese demons such as the Oni. His yellow eyebrows and sideburns are distinctly shaped like those found on such demons, in addition to a bulb-like nose and an angular lower lip pointing upwards. He has a lightning-shaped scar that can be seen from his left sideburn and reaching over his left eye. He also possesses 2 tusk-like conical lower fangs associated with Oni as well. The rest of his teeth from the upper and lower rows are pretty much the same, albeit much smaller. He also has a severe underbite, which makes room for his huge fangs. He has long, two-toned black hair, with 2 long stripes, coming from the roots over his forehead and trailing down the back, a topknot, and tuft of hair on his chin with a slight green hue. His hands and feet are also webbed, typical for a fishman, and his limbs that are somewhat thin in comparison with his enormous girth. His gills are in between his shoulders and neck. I am here because I refuse to take part in the madness going on outside. My people still own a great deal to Whitebeard and I won't fight him like the others would. Jinbei answered, not even bothered by the chains or that he was recently bludgeoned for talking back to a jailer. How are you doing? Knowing that your little brother was right about Teach and now there is a war brewing outside. Ace sighed, it was all true and most of it weighed heavily on his shoulders. I know. And I am sure that once Luffy gets here, he will sink my face in until I learned my lesson. Knowing him for most of my life, he is coming to try and bail me out for my mistake. Jinbei was surprised. In the time he knew Ace, it seemed that nothing can daunt the powerful youth. Just who is this little brother that Ace is so scared of? Back with Luffy and company. If those prisoners looked up from their dried up cells and days of intense heat draining them of any fluids, they will all see a giant snake just slithering down the sandy halls like nothing. No, what will make them think they were dreaming was the fact the snake had riders on her giant head. And somehow, they could tell that this reptile was not from the floor directly above even though it was filled with dangerous and bizarre creatures. Oh my, never have I ever imagined that I will be riding on a magnificent creature with my dearest friends. No, what was bizarre was the prisoner hitching along for the ride. This was Mr. 2 Bon Clay from when the Straw Hats tangled with the Baroque Works organization in the sandy kingdom of Alabastra. Now that he has been reduced to wearing a standard jail uniform complete with simple sleeves and stripes, the only thing that stood out was his ever-changing face. He almost passed over for Zoro for a big but that was not to fool Bon Clay's friends but to get their attention. And aren't you just the woman lover to have 3 girlfriends when I last checked you only had the one? Remind me again why he is coming, Master? Perona felt extremely weirded out, especially when the joyful prisoner tried to touch her on the cheek. She wondered why her captain and Nami seemed to not mind. If we are ever going to get to the bottommost floor to get to Ace, we will need someone who can easily pass for one of the staff and give the performance of a lifetime to hide in plain sight. Luffy responded. He then rubbed down on Nola's head, heads up girl. We are getting close to where all this heat is actually coming from, which is our way down the next floor. Nola growled out an acknowledgement as she would nod her head, but that might disrupt her passengers, until she picked up an unfamiliar scent that screamed dangerous. She stopped cold to see something that looked fierce as its body was covered in shadows, until it finally got out to where we can see that it was more a cartoonish beast than anything. Nevertheless, Bon Clay panicked. It's one of the jailer beasts that hunt and make sure we stay in line. That one is the Minotaurus. The cross-dressing prisoner was terrified, but Luffy and company couldn't take this so-called jailer beast seriously. Minotaurus is a dumb-looking minotaur with cutesy eyes, large lips, and a runny nose. His body pattern resembles that of a Holstein cow. He wears pants, but no shirt. He is also carrying a spiked club. Luffy really couldn't see what was so fierce about this thing, while Bon Clay continued to shake behind his sweaty back, ignoring how slimily it must be and how stinky it smelled. He even ignored how the girls glared at him for it, in spite of the intense heat. And neither of them cared that the beast roared and charged at them. There was nothing to actually worry about when Nola effortlessly caught it with her mighty tail. "You will make an excellent distraction to those guards down below," Luffy said with a devious smirk that made the captured Minotaur sweat from more than the heat. It couldn't even scream when Nola accelerated, with the monsters literally dragged on the ground by her mighty tail. "There, Nola." Luffy spotted a pathway that goes downward into a pit that just stank of heat. Unfortunately, that was where they needed to go. Thankfully, Nola is able to withstand the heat for being a reptile. As for her passengers, duck inside and head for any debris. They will keep us from being digested, Luffy ordered, and while Nami showed reluctance to the idea, both Perona and Bon Clay had only moments before the hidden meaning hit them worse than the growing heat. And Nola was not going to let them protest when she used her large tongue to swallow them whole. Inside the snake's mouth was a bit humid and moist, but Luffy was able to secure everyone on top of a large chunk of rubble that looked to once be a house. It was either this or being cooked alive in that dreadful air. Too bad that the jailer beast was still grasped in Nola's tail. Once Nola descended down the pit, spotted the source of it all. A massive cooking pot. And what was being cooked was not raw meat or even giant vegetables, but prisoners. Nola took one last look at the jailer beast still struggling in her grip, albeit with less strength, and showed a devious smile for a massive snake. In spite of its dumb look, the Minotaurus immediately knew what the predator had in mind and begun struggling. Too bad that it meant nothing to Nola when found standing near the massive cooking pot and threw the jailer beast right into the sizzling water. The prisoners working there were all startled when something big landed in the pot, spilling gallons of burning water everywhere, while a terrible scream of pain and agony was heard for a split second before it turned into a squeal. The prison staff tried to round up the scattered prisoners and return them to their posts. None of them even saw the massive snake that caused the disruption, or that she coughed out half a stone house with people standing on it. "Good girl, Nola," Luffy said as he rubbed his faithful serpent on her huge forehead. The rumbling of the snake showed that she loved it very much until she started to shrink to micro-size and slithered up Luffy's bare arm up to his neck, where she settled into a coil that is not tight enough to be a bother to her owner. Luffy chuckled at the tickling sensation in spite of the heat surrounding them. "She did eat an Akuma no Mi, right, Captain?" Nami felt like flirting also in spite of the heat. "Like I said, you have a preference for ladies with Akuma no Mi powers, right?" To elaborate for their friend, Bon Clay, Nami turned her entire arm into lightning. Not that it could hurt her lover. Perona decided to join, floating up to her captain's sturdy shoulders with a fellow of her hollows giggling along. While Bon Clay felt a small pride that his friend has lovely ladies giving him so much affection, Luffy only looked amused that they were doing something that was not complaining for a change. Too bad that their little relief was spotted by a guard who happened to witness a massive snake spit out pirates before shrinking to a size unseeable. Truly devoted to his job, he took out a Den Den Mushi to inform the warden. XXXXX as for the warden, behold, Harim, Snake Princess, Portgas D. Ace. He will be meeting his fate soon once Marineford finishes the gallows reserved for criminals such as him. Magellan was giving Hancock full attention while treating this as a sick exhibit. It was such a pain to ignore the cries, moans and hollowing from the other prisoners on that level. Unlike the other levels Luffy and company had to brave, there was no intense heat or giant creatures. There wasn't even a long corridor lined with cells. Instead, the cells were giant blocks littered on a massive floor. There was even a cell made for giants. How vulgar of all these ingrates to make such foul noises. Magellan, shut them up already, Hancock shouted with her man-hated, spoiled guys to distract the staff. When she saw the large, devil-looking warden about to get serious and seeing no one else watching, Hancock got closer to Ace's cell. She whispered, "Your brother is coming to save you." Before Ace could make a peep, the entire floor was flooded with the smell of terrible poison. Enough, along with the below of a giant. When eyes laid on Magellan, they were greeted to the sight of the warden suddenly covered in purple venom that was giving off the awful scent. "I am the warden of Impel Down, and I will have obedience from even scum such as yourselves. Even if I will have to kill all of you, there will be no trouble on my watch." Hancock could only watch in slight horror that the venomous, stinking sludge on Magellan came to life. It took on the shape of several massive serpents complete with razor-sharp teeth and made entirely out of poison. "Always beware of me and my Hedora, Hydra," following the rotting smell. A terrifying roar filled the entire floor. XXXXX back with Luffy and company. Hurry up guys. We don't want to be on this floor any longer than right now. Luffy whispered while weaving throughout the various corridors of jail cells with foundations that look like they are melting in the terrible heat. His company were too heated up to even grunt in agreement. Huh, right there. Where Luffy was pointing was a regular passageway that actually descended down further into Impel Down still. It was as good as sign that they were to escape from this truly hellish floor. There were guards, but all of them fell to the ground with foam from their mouths. Can't waste any more time and energy on those guys. We still need to fight our way back up to the exit. It sure beats having to keep falling down something, Captain, Perona chirped, and even she didn't know how she can be so bubbly under these circumstances. Nobody argued. They just took in how halfway down the passageway, the heat was dying. Nothing to complain about that. Until it suddenly got colder with each step took.
Suit back up guys, because if you like the 4th floor, you will love the 5th.
Luffy spoke up while hastily getting his shirt and coat back on. Same as Nami and Perona. At least no one else will see them in their bras. Bon Clay was delayed for a bit while swiping the staffer's coat to wear over his prisoner garb. Snug and nice and tight to Nola. We are finally in real hell. Luffy whispered to the size-changing snake that getting even more tense as the cold is especially dangerous to reptiles like her. Finally, they reached a massive door at the end of the hallway. Luffy grasped the handle and took a deep breath before swinging it wide open.
A powerful gust of freezing air hit like a train to the face. They only needed a quick look to see this whole floor is the world's biggest freezer with jail cells stuffed with prisoners. If you could listen in, they often complained that the food was frozen and can't be eaten while guessing which finger is to fall off next. His companions knew they were smart in putting back on their layers, they can already feel the frost on their bare hands showing.
Here it is, this is as far as those corridors can take us. Luffy wasn't doing any better but tried to focus on what to do here on the frozen floor. I have heard that some prisoners just disappear rather than freezing all over. We need to track down where they're vanishing because we still haven't reached Ace's prison level.
Right, behind you, Luffy. Nami tried to salvage what little heat to spare by buttling around the captain's coat. Same with Perona and Bon Clay. However, a worse fate than freezing over had found them.
So, you are Mugiwara Luffy, the Liber Glade. A voice broke throughout the floor and every prisoner started shivering. For once it was not the terrible cold. I am impressed that you got past our security and amazed that a pirate actually came on his own accord to the prison from hell. But it all ends here, for you making a mockery of the government that keeps this world safe.
If I had a berry for every time someone said that, I will be swimming in millions, Magellan. Luffy was as confident as always, which comforted his companions a tad. Since your office was on this level, I had to hasten to this giant-ass freezer. Was the tour not to your liking? You only get to see Hancock come along once every blue moon, you know. Magellan was not amused at all. You should have stayed a Shichibuki if you wanted to live, like hubby Harim. So, brace for your painful death, Mugiwara. Luffy grinned at the sight of the serpent heads made out of poison while pulling out his Reime Atami Don Pain. Same to you.